Chapter 871. Of course I remember. Speaking of this matter, Peng Xiao still felt a lingering fear even after such a long time had passed. Qin Yining had told him that when they ran out of water in the desert that day, Si Qin couldn't bear to let his subordinates die. Naturally, he had to abandon the rest of the irrelevant people. If they hadn't been lucky enough to catch up with Anari's Khan, the next one to be abandoned would have been Qin Yining. You mean, if it was someone else, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to tell. But this person's voice is too special. He was one of the people abandoned in the desert that day. At that time, Si Qin threw Mrs. Liao and her two trusted subordinates into the desert. They had already been punished for asking them about the location of the treasure. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in the desert at that time, Si Qin and his subordinates wouldn't have let them go so easily in order to save energy. When they were driven away, they were already short of water and injured. Moreover, they couldn't tell directions in the desert. Not only Si Qin, but everyone expected that they wouldn't be able to get out of the desert. But now, this person actually survived. Qin Yining pondered and muttered in a low voice, I wonder how many of them left the desert that day. Did they all survive, or was he the only one who survived? Also, Mrs. Liao knew about the treasure that day, so her subordinates should also know about it. Then, this person wanted to buy the magistrate of Huichuan County. At this point, Qin Yining slowly raised his head and looked at Peng Xiao with his clear eyes in disbelief. Peng Xiao also had the same expression. You mean, the treasure might be in? Qin Yining nodded heavily. Other than this reason, I can't think of any other reason why he would spend so much money to buy the magistrate of Huichuan County. Your Majesty trimmed the mausoleum in Huichuan County and built a large number of buildings. That place is definitely not a safe place to be an official. Even though I'm not in the imperial court, I know that at least 2 magistrates have been killed in a year. Exactly. At the beginning of your Majesty's reign, he ordered people to choose a place with good feng shui to build the mausoleum. The place he chose was Huichuan County. It's just that the chaos of war never ceased. First, there was the Dian incident in the south, then there was the Taitan invasion in the north, and then there was the incident of the Earth Dragon overturning the situation. On top of that, the state treasury was empty due to the successive years of war. Your Majesty's internal treasury was almost completely depleted. Naturally, the construction of the mausoleum had to stop today and resume tomorrow. Besides, just as you said, the officials who built the imperial mausoleum in the past have never had a good ending. The previous premier, Hui Chuan, was fired from his position because the construction of the imperial mausoleum was unsatisfactory. The local magistrate was also beheaded for embezzling the gold and silver of the imperial mausoleum. Ever since the previous county magistrate was beheaded, Huichuan County has yet to have a trusted county magistrate. Peng Xiao told Qin Yining about what happened in Huichuan County. The more she told him, the more certain she was that Qin Yining was right. Even if the treasure isn't in Huichuan County, it might be related to Huichuan County. Otherwise, no one would be so stupid as to throw themselves at the edge of a knife. That's what I think too. With such an analysis, the two of them couldn't hide their excitement. It was really a case of traveling far and wide in search of something, only to find it by chance. For the treasure, many people tried their best to find it, but they couldn't find any clues. However, they actually found such a clue when they went out. Peng Xiao picked up Qin Yining and let him sit on her strong arms as if she was holding a child. You're really my lucky star. Qin Yining let out a soft cry and hurriedly hugged Peng Xiao's neck. She smiled and squinted her eyes. We don't have any clues yet. Don't be happy too early. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. I know. Previously, we were in the dark. Now that we found a clue, it's a major breakthrough. Peng Xiao held Qin Yining and paced around the room. He didn't feel tired at all. Tell me, who is so capable? When they intercepted the treasure, they actually bypassed de Zhou's capital and directly sent it to the north without anyone knowing. I also think it's incredible. Qin Yining patted Pang Zhao's arm and motioned him to put her down, but the treasure may not be there. You should send someone to investigate first. Pang Zhao put Qin Yining down, held her waist with both hands, and kissed her on the cheek. I know. I'll send someone later. It's just that the people I brought with me are all from Jinghu Wei. If it's a war, they are a nest of tigers. But if it's an exploration skill, it's not as good as the Qingtian Alliance's infiltration ability. It's just. I don't know if the current Qingtian Alliance can be trusted. After all, Mrs. Liao was a member of the Qingtian Alliance. If it didn't involve the treasure, as long as Qin Yining's interests were aligned with theirs, naturally everything would be fine. But if it involved the treasure, none of them could guarantee that the Qingtian Alliance wouldn't be disloyal. Even when the Qingtian Alliance followed Qin Yining to help Li Qitian take back the palace, it was because they had common interests and goals. It was for the Qingtian Alliance to walk out of the shadows and no longer be an organization of the Jianghu, but an existence recognized by the imperial family. Qin Yining lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment, then said, "Your words reminded me. Let me observe for a while first. The bigger the organization, the more people there are, the less united they are. The leaders can be trusted, but not all of the subordinates are good people." Pang Zhao nodded, "You're right. Now that the conditions allow it, let's let Jinghu Wei go investigate first. Maybe we'll find something." We're almost done with our work. When are we going back? Do you miss the children? Pang Zhao lowered his body to look at her. Qin Yining nodded and lowered his eyes to lean on Pang Zhao's shoulder. "Although I had a lot of fun playing outside with you, without the children by my side, I feel like something is missing. With them, there's one more thing I'm worried about." Pang Zhao patted her back with his large hand. For a moment, his heart was filled with guilt that almost drowned him. In the end, it was because of him that she was burdened, causing her to wander about in a miserable state. She couldn't be like a normal woman who only cared for her children and family. What she had to do was far more than what those women could do. It was 100 times more tiring than them, and needless to say, dangerous. If her family was understanding, it would be fine. But she just had to have a mother-in-law like that. Pang Zhao lowered his head and kissed Qin Yining's forehead again and again. He felt pity and guilt, but there was no use in repeating many words. Instead, it would make Qin Yining uncomfortable, and he might even have to come over and comfort her. "Don't worry, once the Imperial Envoy takes office, we'll go back as soon as possible. There are 2 great-grandmothers at home, and everyone dotes on them. They must be living very well and safe." Qin Yining nodded and obediently responded. In the following days, other than arranging for people to go to Huichuan County to investigate if there were any abnormalities, Pang Zhao continued to bring Qin Yining to the Lu family to eat and drink. Lu Jing still hadn't given up on Qin Yining, but he didn't continue to pester him as directly as before. He would only occasionally bump into them in the residence, or call them over when there was business. Qin Yining knew. This person wanted to show off in front of her, so she was even more unwilling to pay attention to him. But the more she ignored him, the more Lu Jing seemed to care. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. On this day, Lu Jing ordered Lu Xilai to invite Pang Zhao and Qin Yining to the front hall for a talk. Pang Zhao covered his mouth and yawned, then tightened the fur collar cloak around his shoulders. "Don't tell me your young master wants me to accompany him to discuss business again. I don't understand, is there a higher chance of success if I go?" Lu Xilai curled his lips, secretly thinking that this person's skin was really thick. He didn't know where he got his confidence from. "Young Master Wan, please. Eldest young master must have something good to tell you." Qin Yining took the cloak from Ji Yun and put it on. He looked at Lu Shilai's expression, then analyzed the meaning behind his words, and had a rough guess. Counting the days, the Imperial Envoy's appointment was most likely done, right? Obviously, Peng Shao had also guessed it. His long and narrow phoenix eyes narrowed, then he raised his eyebrows and said, "Okay. Since it's something good, of course I'll go. Who knows, your young master might even find some good wine to treat me to." Peng Shao pulled Qin Yining over, then roughly tidied the white rabbit fur collar of the cloak for him, then walked out in large strides. From the guest courtyard to the front hall, he was already familiar with the path. Lu Shilai, who wanted to lead the way, was completely ignored, and could only follow behind the two with his hands crossed. In the front hall, Lu Zheng was wearing a white brocade robe with wide sleeves, a gray mouse fur collar cloak draped over his shoulders, a net scarf on his head, and a white jade hairpin to fix his hair bun. He was standing with his hands behind his back. When he saw that someone had arrived, his gaze couldn't help but fall on the beauty that he had been longing for. The white fur collar cloak she was wearing made her skin look even more lustrous. "Eldest young Master Lu, I heard from Lu Shilai that you have some good news here." Peng Shao asked with a wide smile. Lu Jing nodded and said, "Yes, I've received news that the Imperial Court has chosen the Ministry of Personnel's Minister Counselor Lu Tingzhong as the Imperial Envoy's old capital. The matter has been settled." "Really?" Peng Shao was pleasantly surprised. Lu Jing said, "Of course, there's no mistake." "Good, good, good." Peng Shao rubbed his hands and spun around excitedly. He said, "Since it's done, I'll prepare to go back to the old capital. Are you going to send a head shopkeeper with me now that we've settled the matter? I'm going to prepare the punishment, you should also choose the person quickly." Lu Zheng was already impatient when he saw that Peng Shao was so impatient. He then looked at Mrs. Ning, who was also looking forward to leaving immediately. He was even more displeased. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Did my Lu family not treat you well? What are you talking about? Even if you let us stay in the Immortal Palace for a long time, we'll get sick of it." Peng Shao waved his hand and said, "But we've been eating and living well in your house these days. I didn't notice that I've put on weight. Thank you for your hard work. When you have the chance to go to the old capital in the future, I'll definitely treat you well as a host." Lu Jing sneered and didn't take his words seriously. He only asked Qin Yining gently, "Mrs. Ning, don't you want to stay for a few more days?" "Thank you for your kindness, young Master Lu." "Of course, I'll follow my young master." Lu Jing nodded and didn't ask any more. Peng Shao bid farewell to Lu Jing and immediately brought Qin Yining back to the guest house to pack their luggage. They immediately moved back to the junk ship and prepared to leave. Seeing their backs were far away, Lu Shizai asked carefully, "Young master, why don't you tell young Master Wan about Mrs. Ning? I'm sure young Master Wan won't refuse you given the current situation." Lu Jing sneered, "What's the point? In the future, I'll make her beg me to take her in." Lu Jing turned around and looked determined. "Let Yuan Yujiang prepare and find the Wan family's ship. Let them set off together. Remind Yuan Yujiang to be careful and don't ruin my plan." Chapter 872. After returning to the junk ship, Qin Yining could finally relax after being tense for more than a month. He no longer had to be careful to see if someone was watching him at all times, and he no longer had to deliberately act frivolous. He could be himself without any worries. Qin Yining felt at ease, but Peng Shao felt a little regretful. Sigh. "I've been living like a god these days. Beauties throw themselves at me all day long, and my appetite has been spoiled. Now that I've returned to my own territory, all the good treatment is gone, and I have to start eating plain porridge and side dishes again." Peng Shao shook his head regretfully, as if he had suffered a great loss. Qin Yining reclined on the soft couch, holding a brass hand warmer and smiling with pursed lips. You should be content. At least I gave you a chance to enjoy yourself. I'm just afraid that once a habit of speaking and doing becomes a habit, it won't be easy to change. What if I lead the children astray when we get home? Pang Shao pursed his lips, and he was jealous. You only have the children in your heart now, and you don't care about me anymore. You always think about the children before you think about me. You're jealous of your son. Even if he's my biological son, he can't take away your care and concern. Pang Shao sat on the chair sullenly. Qin Yining couldn't tell whether he was telling the truth or not, so she couldn't help but lean closer to take a closer look at him. When she leaned closer, he turned his face away. When she leaned closer, he looked to the other side. Hey, you're really jealous. Qin Yining kicked his calf with her foot, which was wearing soft embroidered shoes. Pang Shao immediately looked over angrily. However, when he met her gentle eyes, he broke down and burst out laughing. All right, you're not a child anymore. Why would I be angry? I just have to go back to work. Our relaxed days are coming to an end, so I'm just a little disappointed. Qin Yining nodded understandingly. In comparison, Pang Xiao's days were much more stressful. After all, he was the one who was truly involved in the ups and downs of the imperial court. Even if she stayed at home all day, she still felt suffocated by the matters of the imperial court, let alone Pang Xiao, who was involved in the situation. Qin Yining put down the hand warmer and got up to hug Pang Xiao. Our lives will be better in the future. For example, when I was captured by the Titan, I didn't expect to be reunited with my family either. Pang Xiao also hugged her slender waist and buried his face in her chest. If it were as you said earlier, I would have thought that it would be a big problem for us to get married. Now, not only are we married, we even have 2 children. That's what I meant. To live one's life, one had to have a goal. As long as we don't give up, everything will turn for the better one day. Sometimes, Pang Xiao really admired Qin Yining's tenacity. He was also glad that she had this kind of tenacity. If she didn't have this kind of personality, she would have died years ago when she lost her virginity. They wouldn't have been able to make a promise to each other. Master. At this moment, Huzi's voice came from outside the cabin. Qin Yining quickly let go of his hand, and the 2 of them sat upright. Huzi entered and bowed. Master, shopkeeper Yuan is here. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows. He's here. He's the shopkeeper that young Master Lu arranged to accompany us to check the accounts. That's right. Huzi smiled maliciously. He really has the guts to come with us. Everyone knew Yuan Yujiang's intentions. They had to be patient in the Lu family's territory, but when they returned to the old capital, even if Wang Yi didn't say anything, he would teach this old sex fiend a lesson. Pang Xiao said, since he's here, just arrange for him to stay in a proper cabin. Just send someone to check on him. He even shamelessly said that he wanted to see you and Mrs. Ning. Pang Xiao raised the corner of his mouth and sneered. He still hasn't given up yet. Let's keep him for now. We'll talk about it when we return to the old capital. Yes. Huzi went back and politely led shopkeeper Yuan to the cabin. This was the closest corner of the ship. Jinghu Wei lived next door and opposite. There wasn't even a window in the room. If they wanted to go out, they had to go through a corridor and pass by several Jinghu Wei's rooms. Yuan Yujiang didn't think there was anything wrong. He looked around the cabin with his hands behind his back and said with disdain, "Don't you have any other rooms for guests on this ship?" "I'm really sorry. This is one of the better rooms among the guest rooms. The rooms for the rest of the servants are even worse." Huzi was full of smiles, but his eyes were full of disdain. Yuan Yujiang thought that the ship wasn't big to begin with, and he wouldn't have to live on the ship all the time, so he would arrive in 4 days at the latest. Therefore, he snorted coldly and magnanimously decided to let it go. Where are your young master and Mrs. Ning? Young master and Mrs. Ning still have something to do. Shopkeeper, please take a rest. We'll meet later. Yuan Yujiang nodded and went into the cabin. Huzi introduced the two tall and strong Jinghu Wei to Yuan Yujiang. This is the servant who will serve you. If you have any orders, just call them. Yuan Yujiang originally had servants arranged for him by young Master Lu. But this time he went out with the intention of Qin Yining. He wanted to do some secret things. So he couldn't take a pair of eyes with him. So he left the servant behind. He thought that young Master Wan was a person who knew how to enjoy life and hoped that he would keep a good record in the account book. So he wouldn't treat him badly and would arrange suitable servants for him. Now it seemed that young Master Wan was indeed a sensible person. Okay. You all come in. Yuan Yujiang ordered the two servants to do things. The two servants obediently helped to pack the luggage. Huzi turned and went out of the cabin. When he closed the door, he glanced inside the room. Yuan Yujiang knew nothing about his future. He was asking the two Jinghu Wei, when did your Mrs. Ning and young Master Wan meet? Huzi gently closed the cabin door and spat silently. What a shameless old sex fiend. Although he had sex with concubines, the princess had sternly refused him in prison. If he was a decent person, he would give up the idea. Yet he was still thinking about it. I'll deal with you when we arrive at the old capital, Huzi said to himself. The next 4 days were very unexpected for Yuan Yujiang. He originally thought that he could see the beauty again soon. But who would have thought that after the junk ship left the dock, he ordered his servant to invite her. But the servant stood there like a wooden stake and refused to move. He made a lot of noise in the cabin, but no one came to stop him. There were no windows in the cabin. He couldn't even tell the difference between day and night. He felt hungry, but no one brought him food. Yuan Yujiang had a bad feeling, but he didn't want to believe that young Master Wan would risk everything like this. Didn't this person care that he fiddled with the account book? Ask your young Master Wan to come to see me. Yuan Yujiang angrily punched the wooden bed. The two Jinghu Wei thought that he was a mosquito and ignored him completely. In the corridor outside, Huzi whispered to Pang Shao, Master, isn't it too easy for him to be locked up like this? He was just asking us about the princess consort. Pang Shao smiled and said, it's not too easy for him. After all, he will be locked up for 3 to 5 years. It's not a short time. Master, do you plan to keep him alive? Huzi was surprised. Chapter 873. Pang Shao smiled coldly. It's not that this king didn't give him time to reflect, but the boat has already sailed for a few days, and we're about to reach the dock, yet he's still like this. It can be seen that he has already made up his mind to plot something. I won't kill him, but I won't let him go either. In order to prevent the Lu family from having other things to say, let's lock him up for now. Yes. Once we reach the shore, I'll lock him up alone. While Pang Shao and Huzi were talking, Qin Yining had already finished organizing their luggage. When they came, they didn't bring much, but when they went back, they added a lot of boxes and packages, food, toys, and fashionable rulers. These were all bought by Qin Yining and Pang Shao hand in hand on the street when they were pretending to be rich. After making such a big deal, Pang Zhao's people became imperial envoys, and they didn't need to use their own money, so they made a lot of money. They were in a good mood, so they bought things without hesitation. Bing Tang asked with a smile, this time, we really killed several birds with one stone, but what if the Lu family and Qiu family find out about this in the future? There's nothing to do, they'll find out about this sooner or later. Qin Yining tied the blue ribbon on the collar of his white fox fur cloak, raised his eyes and smiled. If they find out, they can only stare and hate themselves for not falling for it. Don't tell me that we can still gather enough troops to fight against the prince. That's impossible. Ji Yun and Bing Tang both shook their heads. If they really dare to fight, how many people can be Wang Ye's opponent? Qin Yining smiled and said, "That's why, we're not afraid of fighting with real swords and spears. As for other things, it doesn't matter. They would never take the initiative to harm anyone, but if someone wanted to harm them, they wouldn't sit still and wait for death. This time, if they didn't get the news from Qiu Feishan, if they waited until the imperial envoys who wholeheartedly supported Li Qitian and the Qiu family arrived at the old capital, the whole family would be here. Who knows what would happen? They could only slow down. In this kind of either you die or I die situation, they couldn't care so much. Your Highness, the ship is approaching the dock." "Got it." Qin Yining looked at the several large parcels and boxes. He thought for a moment and said, "These things can be sent back slowly. Don't send them back all at once to avoid attracting attention. Later, I will take a carriage and leave alone. I will let Wang Yi disguise himself and quietly return to the barracks. Then, I will return to the residence openly." "Got it." Wang Yi has already made the arrangements. "Don't worry, Princess Consort. No one will be able to tell." As they were talking, Pang Shao came back. After the two of them discussed for a while, Qin Yining asked about Yuan Yujiang. Pang Shao sneered and said, "That old bastard still doesn't know how to repent and is still thinking about you. You don't need to pay attention to him. I will deal with this person." Qin Yining saw that Pang Shao's expression was not good. He knew that he was greatly angered by Yuan Yujiang. Thinking about it, any man wouldn't feel good if his wife was being thought about. He didn't ask any more about this matter. "I will go home first. When you come back from the barracks, you can go home directly, okay? I also want to see the situation in the barracks first. Then I will see how the Tianjizi is doing." When Pang Shao said this, Qin Yining remembered that the Tianjizi was still locked up in the barracks. "I think that the Tianjizi wouldn't run away." Qin Yining took out the short brown clothes that he had prepared for Pang Shao and dressed him up as an ordinary boatman. With the Tianjizi's glib tongue and ability to distort right and wrong, plus she seems to know how to use poison, if she really wanted to escape, you wouldn't have been able to stop her that day. "I think so too." Pang Shao opened his arms and looked down at Qin Yining, who was helping him tie his belt. Then, he couldn't help but smile. She didn't run away, which means that she wants to stay. But you don't have to worry. She has already shown her allegiance, and now our goals are the same. As long as there is no conflict of interest, nothing will happen. Qin Yining nodded. Anyway, if she stays here, she might be of use. Pang Shao laughed. You still dare to use her? Of course. Everyone has their own value. It all depends on how you use them. My sister Yi is so smart. Pang Shao couldn't help but kiss her forehead. He hugged her waist and didn't want to let go. He even kept his face close to hers. Good sister Yi, I don't want to go to the barracks anymore. How about I go home with you first? I'll go back after I see the children. It's the same if I secretly go to the barracks. The god of war Wang Yi, who was awe-inspiring outside, was like a piece of dogskin plaster in front of her. Who would believe it? Qin Yining was both helpless and amused. After thinking about it, he felt that there was nothing wrong with what he said. That's fine. Then you can pretend to be a servant and go home with me. When will you go back after the gathering? It's the same in the barracks. Okay. Pang Shao nodded and smiled. I'll have Huzi go back to the barracks to check on the situation. You can also lock Yuan Yujiang up. Although Pang Shao didn't say it, Qin Yining understood. He smiled and said, "You're in a hurry to cover Yuan Yujiang's eyes, ears, and mouth. When we get there, just lock him up to prevent him from leaking information to the outside world." Pang Shao deliberately said, "I'll kill him when I get back." "You're still worried about leaking information?" Qin Yining rolled his eyes at him. "You're just moving your mouth. If you had the heart to kill him on the spot, you would be sitting on the throne now. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? I just feel that although he has a blasphemous heart, he didn't do anything. He doesn't deserve to die." Pang Shao was moved that he could be understood. "Our sister Yi is so smart. You only know how to say nice things to coax me all day." Qin Yining and Pang Shao talked and laughed. Before long, everything was ready outside. Pang Shao whispered a few words to Huzi. After Huzi nodded, he went to the cabin to get the person. Pang Shao and Qin Yining went up to the deck. Pang Shao stood in the middle of the servants that Jinghu Wei was pretending to be. He deliberately hugged his dog and blended into the crowd. Qin Yining put on the veil and curtain hat. He held the hand stove with one hand and Ji Yun's hand with the other. He stepped on the board that the boatman had set up and slowly got off the boat. An ordinary Lanwu flat-top carriage had been prepared at the dock. It was low-key like an ordinary housekeeper's wife. After Qin Yining got on the carriage, Pang Shao and another Jinghu Wei acted as guards. After they went ashore, they directly followed behind the carriage and quickly disappeared from the dock. At this time, Huzi also brought 2 people with him and carried a sack down from the boat. He tossed the still twisting sack onto the horse's back and then mounted the horse, raising his whip and leaving. The gate of Qin Manor was getting closer and closer. However, Qin Yining didn't dare to go in immediately. Instead, he took a detour to the back alley. Pang Shao looked left and right. Seeing that there was no one watching, he personally went to knock on the door. The person who answered the door was an old lame servant. When he saw Pang Shao, he didn't recognize him immediately. "Who is it?" Qin Yining had already gotten off the carriage and came forward with a smile. "Uncle Qin, it's me. Io, please come in." Uncle Qin immediately stepped aside to let him in, beaming with joy. Qin Yining left behind Bing Tang and Ji Yun to tidy up the things they brought back. He turned around and asked Uncle Qin, "Is everything okay at home?" "Okay, everything is fine." Qin Yining nodded with a smile and walked inside with Pang Shao. When they arrived at the second gate, the older female servant on the gate naturally saluted Qin Yining. However, when she saw that Pang Shao, an attendant, wanted to enter the inner residence, she couldn't help but reach out to stop him. Qin Yining chuckled and waved his hand. "It's fine. You just need to make way." Pang Shao raised his head and straightened his stooped body. He faintly smiled at the older female servant blocking the way. The older female servant immediately exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, so it's fourth young master. This old woman has eyes but can't see. Don't take it to heart. Please come in." When he heard this form of address and saw her familiar appearance, Qin Yining knew that she was an old member of the Qin Manor. He smiled and thanked her. Then, he and Pang Shao went to Ci Shao Garden together. When they arrived at the entrance of Ci Shao Garden, there was already a servant girl running inside to report the news. The two of them had just bypassed the hall and stepped onto the tidy square bricks when they saw a tall and straight figure standing in the corridor. Qin Yining stopped in his tracks and widened his eyes. He looked at the man wearing a wide-sleeved Daoist robe. His features were sparse and there was a smile on his face. He was stroking his beard and looking at him. Tears immediately gushed out of his eyes. "Father!" Qin Yining ran to Qin Huayuan in a few steps and knelt on the ground with a plop. He grabbed his father's robe and sobbed. Qin Huayuan's eyes were also wet. He supported Qin Yining with both hands. Quickly get up, quickly get up. Pang Xiao also bowed deeply and grinned. Father-in-law, you're back. Sister Yi is too happy. Earlier, the whole family was scared to death. Qin Huayuan smiled and patted Pang Xiao's shoulder. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go inside first. Okay. Qin Yining's face was still covered in tears, but he couldn't help but laugh. As soon as they entered, Qin Yining pulled on Qin Huayuan's sleeve and asked him questions before he could even go around the screen to greet the old madam. Father, when did you come back? Why did you come back at this time? The journey must have been very difficult, right? You came back secretly, right? Qin Huayuan smiled and said, You little girl. You're already so old, yet you're still so impatient. Your daughter is just worried about you. The people inside seemed to have heard the noise outside. First, they heard a series of footsteps. Then two little people ran out like two little bulls. They rushed out one after the other. One hugged Qin Yining's left leg, and the other hugged her right leg. Mother, mother. You're back. You bought snacks for Honggu, Mother, I want a hug. Qin Yining smiled and kissed the two children. Pang Xiao picked Xiao Gu up. Hey. My family's Xiao Gu is strong again. Why is he only calling you mother and not father? Xiao Gu hugged Pang Xiao's neck and looked at him for a long time. Then, he grinned. Father. Seeing that his older brother was being carried, Honggu also grabbed Pang Xiao's pants. Father, Honggu also wants a hug. Pang Xiao laughed loudly and bent down to carry Honggu. He kissed the two children's cheeks. Xiao Gu was quiet. Chapter 874. Qin Huayuan took Brother Han and bumped him in his arms. He smiled and asked, Do you still remember the sentence that grandfather taught you just now? Brother Han thought for a moment and answered loudly, Hang the people and punish them for their crimes. Zhou Fa and Yin Tang. Sit in the imperial court and ask for Dao. Hang the arch and level the chapter. Qin Huayuan smiled and nodded. He then asked Brother Zhao in Pang Zhao's arms, What does this sentence mean? Does Brother Zhao still remember it? Brother Zhao blinked his long eyelashes and shook his head with a pout. He seemed to feel embarrassed and simply buried his face in Pang Zhao's arms. Brother Han also frowned, Grandfather, that sentence is too long. Brother Han also can't remember it. Qin Yining was amused, Father, you're starting to teach them the 1,000-character classic. They're all very smart. Knowing that he was praised, Brother Han proudly shook his head. Pang Xiao looked at him and didn't say anything that he could persuade him. At first, he thought that the children were too young and it was too early to start learning the 1,000-character classic before they finished speaking. However, it was obvious that Qin Huayuan taught them well. The two children were enjoying it. He was a rough person. His father-in-law was more experienced in this area. In the future, he was assured that his father-in-law would teach the children. The group of people entered the inner room while talking. Old Madam, Madam Zheng, and Madam Ma were sitting on the arhat bed by the window and talking. Second Old Master and his wife, Qin Han and his wife were all there. Qin Huayuan and Miss Ba were also sitting on the other side of the small table, talking and laughing in a low voice. When Qin Yining saw that the whole family was there, he happily went forward and bowed to Old Madam and the others. Pang Xiao put Brother Zhao down and also bowed to Old Madam and the two maternal aunts. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Old Madam smiled kindly, but her complexion wasn't as rosy as before. After experiencing so much separation and reunion, old Madame had long lost her competitive spirit. In addition, she had been with Madame Zheng and Madame Ma for the past few days. Her thoughts had also been influenced by them. Now that her children were gathered by her side, it was already her greatest happiness. Qin Huayuan smiled and handed Brother Zhao and Brother Han to the wet nurse, asking them to take the children out to eat snacks. Mammy Qin knew that Qin Huayuan had something serious to say. She retreated to the door and motioned for the servant girls to retreat with her. She also ordered them to close the door and guard outside to prevent anyone from approaching. Qin Huayuan said, "Now that Jishi and Sister Yi are back, our family can be considered complete. I have a decision, and I want to tell you now so that everyone can listen." Second Old Master and Third Old Master looked at each other and couldn't help but think to themselves, "It's true." Qin Huayuan had been back for half a month. Although he still looked as gentle and refined as before, as his biological brother, it could be seen that he often had a lot on his mind. Having expected such a conversation, Second Old Master said, "Eldest brother, if you have something to say, just say it." Old Madam also said, "Brother Meng, what did you decide?" Qin Huayuan sighed and said with emotion, "I was able to survive this time because the process was really bumpy. I won't go into detail about the hardships, but everyone can imagine it. When I was walking in the desert, although there were people arranged by Sister Yi, the feeling of looking around at a loss and not being able to distinguish where I came from and where I was going was really. During this period of time, I thought a lot and also saw through a lot. I worked for the imperial court for most of my life, first in Dian, then in Dezhou. But in the end, you all saw how I ended up. My old colleagues in Dian still secretly scold me for treason. Needless to say, my colleagues in Dezhou didn't even come to offer condolences for my death. There was only one prince consort Ji, and it was all for the sake of son-in-law." Qin Huayuan stood up and pointed to the place under his feet. "When the fatuous ruler and the demon empress were still alive, because of me, the family suffered. Sister Yi was almost caught by the demon empress and eaten. The whole family also faced revenge. The land under our feet was stained with the blood of our family Qin people, and how many loyal servants of the family Qin died in vain." Old Madam pursed her lips and tears flowed down her face. "My twin granddaughters and my filial third daughter-in-law," when everyone heard this, their noses turned sour. Thinking of his third wife who was killed to protect his son, Third Master choked with sobs. Qin Yu also wiped his tears with his sleeves. He hadn't remarried yet because of his deceased wife. Everyone knew the reason for the tragedy of the family Qin. When the male members of Duke Ding's Sun family were executed and the female members were made into servants of officials, old Madame Zheng understood the anger and heart-wrenching pain of having a broken family the most. Madame Zheng took old Madame's hand and patted it comfortingly, but she also shed tears. Qin Huayuan shook his head. "I thought I had a clear conscience, but looking back now, after wasting most of my life, my family was also involved. Now, I don't want to make a name for myself. I don't want to leave my name in history. His Majesty's fear of us has never been eliminated. If we stay here, I'm afraid we will become targets in the future." With a firm gaze, Qin Huayuan bowed to old Madame and his family. "This time, Sister Yi's subordinates saved me. In order to get rid of the pursuers, they directly took me to an oasis in the desert called Xia. Back then, and Jishi established a place there. I lived there for a while and did a thorough inspection. Although it's a secluded place, the people there are still simple and honest. It's not difficult to control and develop there. So today, I want to tell everyone that if we stay here, we will become the hindrance of Jishi and Sister Yi sooner or later. In the future, our lives will be in the hands of the Emperor. Second brother, third brother, and I are now free from official positions and don't care about our names. Why don't we move to Xia and start over there? Qin Huayuan looked at Madame Zhang and Madame Ma. He bowed and said, "Mother-in-law, old madam, my proposal is not only aimed at the family Qin, but also at the Wang Fu and Sun family. Even if I don't say it in detail, everyone is aware of Jishi's current situation. The emperor is afraid of Jishi, and there will be a war in the future. All of us will be involved. This time, I am already a dead person outside, and the spearhead will turn to you. Instead of staying here and being frightened, why don't we go to Sia together?" This time, I went to Sia with cloth, gold, silver, and grain seeds. Moreover, Sister Yi's subordinates have a way to distinguish the direction in the desert. Seeing that I went in and came out, it's not like we can't come out even if we go. At that time, we will stay away from trouble and manage that oasis well. Not only can we protect the safety of our family, but we can also stay away from disputes and quietly recuperate. We won't be a burden to Jishi and Sister Yi, and we won't have to worry about being taken hostage. Qin Huayuan's words were very straightforward, and all the women and children present understood. Although his words were crude, the truth was comprehended by him during this period of time. For our three families to reproduce, leaving this place of trouble is the most appropriate way. Sia is deep in the desert, and the desert is the best barrier. We can start over there. Second brother, third brother, what do you think? What about mother-in-law? The room fell into a dead silence. Everyone frowned and pondered. After a long time, second master said in a hoarse voice, "I think what eldest brother said is reasonable." "I agree." Third master also let out a long sigh and nodded. He was different from second master. Second master didn't work as an official and was idle at home. He only taught the family's children to read. However, third master controlled the family's economic lifeline. He had a large business to do. Compared to second master, third master had more to give up when he nodded. Qin Huayuan secretly nodded and then explained, "Third brother, you don't have to worry. Even if our family moves, it doesn't mean we won't come out. Your business can be looked after by reliable people. After a period of time, you can check the accounts and make specific arrangements. You don't have to completely give up." Third master nodded, "This way, it will be more reliable." "I also agree." The three masters all nodded, and the children naturally couldn't disobey. Old madam didn't care where she went. As long as the family could live together safely, it was good. Naturally, they also agreed. Madame Zheng thought for a while and said, "Our Sun family already has some foundation in the south. However, this isn't difficult. I can temporarily hand over those connections to Sister Yi. When things are peaceful in the future, we can deal with them carefully." Qin Huayuan respectfully said, "Mother-in-law is right. All of us can leave, but Sister Yi and I can't." Everyone's eyes gathered on the two of them. Pang Xiao smiled, "Father-in-law, you don't have to worry. If everyone I care about can go to a safe place, then I can do things freely. However, Sister Yi." Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining with slight hesitation. "Sister Yi, why don't you follow the family to Sia?" Qin Yining was deep in thought with his eyes lowered. When he heard this, he suddenly raised his head. "Why? If I leave, will I let you fight alone? Just now, I was thinking that when we left the capital, young Master Mu just happened to leave a lot of bandit corpses for the imperial court. The whole family suddenly disappeared, so we can push the blame to the bandits. Your Majesty is far away in the capital and can't see the scene with his own eyes. This statement is 80% credible. But I can't leave. If I leave, it is very likely to attract your Majesty's attention. Even if your Majesty doesn't notice, don't forget that you still have a troublemaker locked up there." Pang Xiao looked solemn. He had to admit that Qin Yining's concerns were well-founded. The Tian Jizi's target was him and his wife. If Qin Yining stayed, the Tianjizi wouldn't care where the Qin family and the Pang family went. However, if Qin Yining also left, the Tianjizi might pay attention to the desert. The desert in the no man's land could stop Li Qitian's troops, but it couldn't stop the Tianjizi. Just as Pang Shao couldn't leave, Qin Yining couldn't leave either. Pang Shao sighed softly and nodded helplessly. Chapter 875. Pang Shao knew that Qin Huayuan was full of vicissitudes of life and no longer had the heart to be strong. Although his thoughts were different from his father-in-law's, he couldn't deny that from Qin Huayuan's point of view, taking advantage of the current situation to retreat was indeed the safest way. However, Qin Huayuan wasn't him, so he didn't fully understand his current situation. Anyone could leave, but he and Qin Yining couldn't. If they also retreated, who would be the barrier? Not to mention anything else, Tianjizi was obviously still conflicted about the day's calculations. Just as he had analyzed, a desert could stop Li Qitian, but it might not be able to stop Tianjizi. Don't worry, father-in-law. I will think carefully. Qin Huayuan nodded with a heavy expression. Mrs. Ma smiled and said, Dai Fu, listen to your father-in-law. Grandma doesn't ask you to be rich, I just want our family to be safe and sound. I understand what Grandma means. Pang Shao smiled. Mrs. Ma patted the back of her hand, thought for a moment, and said, Since the whole family is moving, I will go back and tell your grandfather. We will go with the in-laws, so we don't have to go through the trouble twice. We can take care of each other when the family is together. Mrs. Ma is right, Mrs. Ma said. Madame Jane added, when we reach the oasis, we can continue to help Sister Yi take care of the children as usual. The children's grandfather will be responsible for teaching them literature, and you can also teach them how to train their muscles and bones. Mrs. Ma heard this and nodded repeatedly. That's good. My heart is full of these two precious children. I feel sad if I can't see them. Mrs. Ma looked at Pang Shao. But your mother, Pang Shao smiled and said, Grandma, don't worry. You and grandfather can rest assured and prepare. I will order people to bring my mother back as soon as possible and set off with the family. Oh, that's good. Mrs. Ma smiled and nodded. When Qin Huayuan saw that his suggestion was accepted without any resistance, he could finally put down the huge rock in his heart. Since we've come to an agreement, let's go make our own preparations. The sooner we're ready, the sooner we can set off. Yes. Second Old Master, Third Old Master, Qin Han, and the others all nodded and left the old madam's courtyard. Qin Yining had been standing silently by the side, observing the expressions of the whole family. Regarding this family relocation plan, there were those who were happy, those who didn't care, and naturally, there were those who were unwilling. As expected, Miss Ba and Qin Huining didn't look too good. In fact, she could understand Miss Ba and Qin Huining's feelings. It was not easy to talk about the marriage, but it was repeatedly delayed by family matters. Her two children were almost 2 years old. Qin Huining, who was the same age as her, and Miss Ba, who was a little younger than her, were still unmarried. Now that they had moved to Shiyu, the marriage of the two ladies was even more uncertain. They couldn't be blamed for feeling sad. If this happened to anyone, it would be hard to let go. Qin Huining wanted to persuade them, but considering that she married into the highest family among her cousins, if she went to persuade them, it would be hard to avoid suspicion that she was just standing there and talking without knowing her own backside. Thus, she turned around and quietly pulled on Qin Han's sleeve. Second older brother, I see that Miss Ba and Huining seem to have something on their minds. Later, let second older sister-in-law go take a look. Qin Han was surprised and looked at the backs of Qin Huining and Miss Ba. He immediately understood, don't worry, I'll go personally. I'll definitely comfort them. The Han family's second young mistress sometimes had small thoughts. She was easily overwrought with many things that she couldn't resolve herself. Qin Yining was also somewhat afraid that she would persuade them and make them even more uncomfortable. It would be better if Qin Han was willing to go personally. Pang Xiao walked to Qin Yining's side and greeted him with a smile. After Qin Han walked away, Pang Xiao said, "I'll go back to the barracks to take a look. I won't be coming tonight. Be a good girl at home." Hearing his coaxing tone, Qin Yining laughed out loud. "Don't worry, I'm not a 3-year-old child. Besides, the whole family is here, so there's nothing to worry about." Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. These days, he and Qin Yining had been sticking together and occasionally had to be separated. He still felt unaccustomed to it. He sighed and stroked her soft cheeks with his large hand. "Be good. If there's anything, just send someone to tell me. Don't shoulder it by yourself." Qin Yining nodded. She felt as if she was being held in the palm of his hand and couldn't help but reveal a big smile. The little dimples on her cheeks were especially lovable. Pang Xiao also smiled at her, but he still used all his strength to walk out. He felt that if he looked at her a few more times, he wouldn't be able to walk out of the house today. Seeing Pang Xiao walk away with large strides, Qin Yining smiled and turned around. She saw Qin Huaiyuan looking at her with a smile. "Father." Qin Yining's cheeks flushed. Qin Huaiyuan smiled and said, "Jishi went to the military camp." "That's right. He still has something to take care of. This time, he arranged for a substitute to be there. If he wants to walk around openly, there's still a process." Qin Huaiyuan nodded with a smile. Qin Yining followed Qin Huaiyuan out of the old matriarch Ci Shao garden and took a stroll along the small path in the residence. "Father must have gone through a narrow escape this time, right?" Qin Yining said with a long sigh. "At that time, I discovered this in the palace, but I was under house arrest. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to pass on the news. Fortunately, I still remember that father mentioned eunuch Jiang Yuan to me at that time, so I passed on the news to the Qing-Tian alliance. However, I was afraid that the people from the Qing-Tian alliance wouldn't be able to make it in time." There was no need for Qin Yining to say it in detail. Qin Huaiyuan could imagine the scene at that time. Qin Yining was trapped alone in the palace, and Pang Xiao was far away in the south. She had to face the Taiden princess deliberately making things difficult for her. She had to advance step by step in the palace and not leave any evidence for others to use against her. She also had to think of a way to pass on the news. These were not considered. The most exhausting thing was that the mountain was high and the road was far away. She simply didn't know whether everything she did was useful or not. Qin Huaiyuan stopped in his tracks and patted Qin Yining's shoulder with heartache. Thousands of words turned into a long sigh. The situation was like this. As Qin Huaiyuan's daughter, she enjoyed glory, splendor, wealth, and leisure, but she had to worry and fear a lot. It's father who brought you down. Child, you've had a bad life since you were young. Because of father fever's troubles, you were swapped out by bad people and suffered outside for 14 years. Now that father thinks about it, it's hard to imagine how you survived when you were 8 years old and went into the mountains alone. Not to mention that you were only 8 years old at that time. Even if father went into the mountains now, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to survive. In the end, father is not a qualified father. At that time, father was muddle-headed and didn't support you. As a result, when you returned home, you were suspected by your mother. You didn't enjoy much of the warmth of a family. Later, father even brought you down. I had to bring you to the peace talks. You were involved in the matters of the imperial court. You were almost eaten by the demon empress, and you were caught up in the drought and famine. Father, why do you have to brood over the past? No matter how difficult it was at that time, didn't extreme misfortune turn to bliss in the end? Yes, but that's because you were smart and you did a good job. Qin Huayuan sighed and said, in general, father feels guilty towards you because father didn't give you a comfortable life like other noble young ladies. Now, I'm going to take my family and escape, leaving you here. Qin Huayuan lowered his eyes and looked at Qin Yining. His eyes were filled with sorrow and guilt. When Qin Yining saw her father like this, she also felt sad. She forced herself to be spirited and said with a smile, "Father, don't say that. The current situation is already different from before. The world has just been settled, and the Titan is temporarily powerless to disturb the borders. There's also a small emperor in the south who is no longer a threat. Today's emperor is full of ambition, scheming, and suspicious. How could he tolerate Pang Zhishi? Our family can't stay here like fools and become living targets. You should take everyone related to us and leave. That's the best thing to do. Moreover, they don't know what Xie is like, but do you think I don't know? Although the customs there are simple and honest, it has been isolated for many years. If we want to build Xie up, it won't be done in a day. Father already has to work hard to mediate the relationships between several families. I'm afraid you'll have to spend even more effort on the construction of Xie. Father still has a lot of things to do in the future." Qin Yining thought of the vast oasis. It was almost equivalent to a piece of undeveloped land, and its geographical location was very different from the old capital. It was much hotter there, and her family would probably need a long time to adapt. In addition, everyone in the family had their own thoughts. As the head of the family, Qin Huayuan had to mediate. She could already imagine her family Qin's future life in Xie. Qin Huayuan lowered his eyes and shook his head. These are all things that I should do as a father. I'm just worried about you. Qin Yining knew what Qin Huayuan meant. She smiled freely and said, "Father, you don't have to worry. Wang Yi will protect me. Moreover, now that our family is in a safe place, His Highness and I will be able to do whatever we want." "So, you mean you don't plan to persuade Wang Yi to stay away from the disputes and live in seclusion in the mountains?" Qin Yining pondered for a moment, then told Qin Huayuan about the Tian Jizi in detail. "She's a strange person. Even now, she's willing to be put under house arrest by Wang Yi in the army. I think she just doesn't want to leave. She believes in destiny and cares a lot about the divination from back then. I think she's always wanted the Ziwei Emperor star to take that position. If we have the same goal and common interests as her, then it's fine. But if we go against her ideas, she can blow up the Imperial Mausoleum in Beiji. Who knows if she'll blow up the capital next time. Although the desert is a natural barrier for Xie, it can't stop Tian Jizi. If Wang Yi and I live in seclusion, you'll become Tian Jizi's targets, regardless of whether we go to the desert or not. Now that things have come to this point, I think it's better to put all our eggs in one basket and completely solve all the problems. Otherwise, there'll be endless troubles in the future." Qin Huayuan listened to Qin Yining's words and slowly widened his eyes in shock. "Sister Yi, what I heard, why does it sound like we should comply with the Tian Jizi's divination?" Chapter 876. If sacrificing our lives can quell this chaos and bring peace to the world, then that's fine. But His Majesty doesn't just want our lives. With His Majesty's temperament, he'll definitely kill everyone. He'd rather kill 1,000 innocents than let a single one go. Wang Yi and I aren't alone. We have family, friends, and people who follow us. Those people also have their own families. We're in this position now. To put it bluntly, we're already riding a tiger. The two of us can die, but what about everyone else? We don't have the power to ask everyone to die for the sake of world peace. No one was raised in 18 months. Why should we sacrifice ourselves for the sake of the majority? Moreover, in my opinion, His Majesty isn't a wise ruler. He's wildly ambitious. He's created chaos, and he's done countless things that waste people's money. Moreover, he's afraid of meritorious officials. He persecutes meritorious officials. I don't believe that such a narrow-minded and suspicious ruler can protect this country well. If he continues to cause trouble and Tianjizi stirs things up again, Dezhou will be in chaos again in less than 10 years. Qin Huaiyuan didn't expect Qin Yining to say something like this at this time. Fortunately, there were only the two of them here. If Li Qitian knew about this, he'd kill Qin Yining several times. However, Qin Huaiyuan wasn't surprised that Qin Yining had such thoughts. Have you made your decision? Qin Huaiyuan asked. Qin Yining smiled and said, since we can't live in seclusion, this is the only way. You have to know that if you choose this path, the suffering you'll face will be unimaginable. Perhaps it'll be even more difficult than before. But Wang Yi and I don't seem to have any other choice now. Father and daughter both fell silent. After a long time, Qin Huaiyuan said, many times, it's not about what we want to do, but what we can do. Father also knows that you and Jishi are sensible people. If you have decided, Father will also support you. However, all of you must take good care of yourselves. Remember to prioritize your own safety in all matters. You must not let your emotions affect your decisions. Yes, your daughter will remember. Qin Yining smiled. There were many things he wanted to say, such as telling Qin Huaiyuan to take good care of himself, and telling him that if anything happened to her and Pang Xiao in the future, the children would be entrusted to him. However, after pondering for a moment, he didn't say such harsh words. With his father's intelligence, even if he didn't say it out loud, he would understand it in his heart. Since he understood, why should he say more and cause the two of them to feel sad? Qin Yining changed the topic. Father, I wanted to ask why I didn't see Andy Chow today. He had thought that this was a relaxing topic that could at least distract Qin Huaiyuan. Who would have thought that when he heard this, Qin Huaiyuan's footsteps paused. There was even a strange stiff expression on his face. It's nothing. Perhaps she had something to do and went out. Qin Huaiyuan stammered, aren't you going back to see Brother Zhao and Brother Han? Originally, they had been chatting well. Why did Qin Huaiyuan rush to chase him away when Chao Yuqing was mentioned? Qin Yining was certain that there was something fishy going on. However, she was a daughter and not a son, so it wasn't good to ask in detail. He followed Qin Huaiyuan's wishes and said, I was just about to go see my mother. I'll go back and accompany the children later. That's fine. I'll go discuss this relocation with your second and third uncles. Qin Yining bowed to his father and went to Xingning Garden to see the Sun clan. The Sun clan member had a gentle smile on his face. He was currently instructing Mother Jean to bring people to check the contents of the boxes. When she saw Qin Yining, she smiled and said, Sister Yi, come here quickly. Mother, Qin Yining bowed respectfully and then sat down next to the Sun clan member with a smile. The Sun clan member took her hand and said with a smile, your complexion looks better after this trip. That's right. Although it was a serious matter, I won't be at a disadvantage when I'm with Wang Yi. That's good. I can rest assured that he's good to you. Once you and son-in-law are done with your business, you must come back as soon as possible. Qin Yining smiled and nodded, yes, mother. Don't worry. The Sun clan was still the same as before. They weren't good at these kinds of things. Qin Yining also didn't want her to know about these troublesome matters. The Sun clan member smiled and said, where's your father? Father went to the front to discuss the itinerary with second and third uncles. The Sun clan member nodded, but there was a hint of hesitation in her expression. Qin Yining immediately noticed the Sun Clan member's strange expression and couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Mother, do you have something to tell your daughter?" "Not really, but there's something I want to tell you." The Sun Clan member smiled and said, "I plan to ask Chao Yuqing to marry into the family and become your father's concubine." Qin Yining was very surprised. Based on her understanding, the Sun Clan member was definitely not a magnanimous person. Although the Sun Clan wouldn't kill the 4 concubines that Qin Huayuan took in for his son, she was still unhappy when Qin Huayuan went to the concubines' rooms. Why would she take the initiative to ask Chao Yuqing to marry into the family this time? Perhaps the Sun Clan member saw her surprise, so she sighed and said, "After going through so much, I've already gotten over it. Your father is fine, and that's better than anything else. Moreover, how many years can a person live? Your father and I have already left halfway, and we don't want to be unhappy because of these things." Although Chao Yuqing's background isn't good, she's a good woman who is affectionate and righteous. Her heart is with your father, and for your father, she would even do her best to protect you and me. She's so affectionate that even a stone would be warmed. Your father already has the intention of being moved. I've also thought that if a beauty like Chao Yuqing marries into the family, your father wouldn't fancy anyone else, right? It's better than old madam making the decision to bring in 3 or 4 women in the future. With such a person who knows everything, our family's days can be more peaceful. Qin Yining heard this and couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for the Sun Clan. From this, it seemed that the Sun Clan was more open-minded and polite than her. If she were to think about it from another perspective, if a stunning beauty was wholeheartedly devoted to Pang Xiao and risked her life for Pang Xiao, and Pang Xiao also had feelings for her, she would probably hate him with jealousy instead of accepting him. She would only feel that she had been betrayed, because she had never given less than anyone else. Presumably, it was the same for the Sun Clan. "Mother, do you feel wronged?" The Sun Clan member was stunned, and her smile was a bit bitter. "I feel wronged, and I also feel jealous. It's even more difficult to imagine my husband being with another woman." Taking a deep breath, the Sun Clan member smiled again, "But in this world, there are always some things that are more important than your own feelings." Qin Yining truly admired the Sun Clan's change of heart. She hugged the Sun Clan member and silently patted her back to comfort her. The Sun Clan member also hugged Qin Yining and continued, "However, although your father has nodded, Madame Chao has tactfully refused. These days, she has been staying in the guest courtyard and is unwilling to come to the Fu. It's not good for me to force her, so this matter has been stalled." Qin Yining was very surprised. She was well aware of Chao Yuqing's painstaking efforts and dedication to Qin Huayuan. It was rare for Qin Huayuan to agree, and the Sun Clan also nodded. What did Chao Yuqing mean by not agreeing at this time? Chao Yuqing had entered the family Qin as a concubine and had seriously competed with the Sun Clan for favor. She shouldn't mind the status of a concubine. Then why? Qin Yining hesitated and said, "Do you want me to go and talk to her? You are a married daughter. How can you talk to your father about this kind of thing?" The Sun Clan member burst into laughter. "All right, you don't have to worry about this matter. I will go and talk to her. She is unwilling to marry into the Fu, so there must be a knot in her heart. If there is a misunderstanding, it will be fine." Qin Yining saw the Sun Clan member's gentle smile and gentle tone, so she knew that she sincerely wanted to matchmake them. She didn't say anything else and only nodded. "Mother, no matter what you do, as long as it is from the bottom of your heart, your daughter will support you." "Yes." The Sun Clan member nodded, but her eyes were moist. She had already discussed this matter with Madame Zhang. The reason why she could be so open-minded was also the result of Madame Zhang's mediation. Qin Huayuan wasn't a person who indulged in beauty. Madame Chao was doing her best. As the matriarch, if she still didn't agree, then it would be a bit too unreasonable. If she agreed, it would also depend on Qin Huayuan's opinion. If Qin Huayuan refused, she wouldn't persuade him. If Qin Huayuan agreed, she would try her best to make peace. Now that Qin Huayuan had agreed, the Sun clan also knew that they couldn't stop matters of the heart. Moreover, Madame Chow herself wasn't annoying. But even though they understood the reason, their hearts still ached. The Sun clan member hugged Qin Yining and closed her eyes to cry silently. Qin Yining also felt very uncomfortable. But since the elders had already decided, as a married daughter, she had no reason to say anything. Qin Yining returned to her room worriedly. Zhao Gu and Han Gu had eaten their fill. They were being watched by Xianyun, Qiu Lu, and the others as they played the 9 linked rings on the Arhat bed. When they saw Qin Yining, the 2 children happily jumped up and down, shouting, "Mother, mother, hug hug hug." Qin Yining's heart almost melted. She quickly walked over, hugged the children, and kissed each of them. "Mother's precious sweetheart, mother missed you so much." Zhao Gu and Han Gu giggled and smeared saliva on Qin Yining's face together. The mother and children huddled together and laughed and played for a long time. The sound of their laughter could be heard outside. When they were tired from playing, Qin Yining lay down with the children in her arms and asked softly, "Do you like grandfather and grandmother?" "Yes." "What grandfather taught you, did you learn it?" "Of course we learned it." Han Gu sat up. Han Gu is the smartest. He learned it as soon as he learned it. Zhao Gu nodded heavily, indicating that he was also the smartest. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Looking at the 2 children's innocent and cute smiling faces, they still didn't know that they were going to be separated from mother and son. She didn't know how long this separation would take, and she didn't even know if it would be a lifetime. "Mother, why are you crying?" Han Gu crawled over on all 4s and wiped Qin Yining's tears with his small hands. Zhao Gu was originally smiling, but now his little face became serious. He pursed his lips and said, "Mother, don't cry." Qin Yining smiled, but as she smiled, she squeezed out more tears. She got up and hugged the 2 children in her arms. "Mother is fine. Mother just can't bear to part with you two." Zhao Gu continued to pout. "If we can't meet again, I don't want them to think that Wang Yi and I went out to buy snacks for them. This will become a wound in their hearts that can't be erased. It's better to say that Wang Yi and I went out to play." When the maidservants heard this, tears fell from their eyes. Bing Tang said, "Wang Fei, I'm not leaving. I want to stay." "Bing Tang, I know what you're thinking, but it's too dangerous for me and Wang Yi to stay by our side. You, and all of you." Qin Yining looked at the others. "I can't drag all of you into danger. All of you will follow my father and the others and start a new life at Shiyu. It's a pity that I went back on my words. Back then, I said that I would choose good in-laws for all of you and marry you off grandly. But now, I can't care about that anymore." Ji Yun stomped her feet. "Wang Fei, what are you talking about? What do you mean by tired? If it weren't for Wang Yi, I would have starved to death or been kidnapped. How could I live a clean and happy life? Wang Fei treats me sincerely. How can I leave at such a crucial time? Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I'm not afraid." "That's right, Wang Fei." Xian Yun and Qiu Lu nodded. Lian Xiaozhou grabbed Qin Yining's arm. "Older sister, I'm not leaving either. If it weren't for you, I might still be a little savage on the mountain. I might have been eaten by wild beasts, bitten to death by snakes, or frozen to death or starved to death. I'm not leaving. I want to stay with you." The little girl who couldn't even speak clearly in the past was now fair and tender. Bing Tang liked to bring her along no matter what he did. Lian Xiaozhou was like heaven and earth compared to the past. Qin Yining was moved by her words. But even if she was moved, she couldn't change her mind. I'm well aware of your intentions. Qin Yining looked at them one by one and sighed. This time, you have to listen to my arrangements. You can't disobey. Moreover, there are so many people at home. When I'm not here, I'm counting on you to take care of them. Especially the two young ones. Although Qin Yining's tone was gentle, her attitude was very firm. Bing Tang lowered her eyes. In any case, Huzi will follow Wang Yi. I don't want to be so far away from Huzi. Moreover, if Wang Fei doesn't have a single servant girl by her side, won't people be suspicious? Moreover, Wang Fei also needs a trustworthy doctor. I will definitely follow Princess Consort. Qin Yining opened her mouth, but she couldn't find the words to refute. Ji Yun took advantage of the situation and said, Bing Tang is right. If Wang Fei doesn't have anyone by her side following her, people will be suspicious. These days, this servant and Bing Tang have been following you everywhere. Xian Yun and Qiu Lu are also familiar with taking care of little young master. Why don't you let the two of us follow you as usual? Qin Yining was a little helpless when he heard this. At this time, whoever follows me will be Wang Fei. Before Qin Yining could finish speaking, a servant girl outside the door hurriedly replied, There's a young lady outside. She said that she's from the Mu family and is here to ask for help. Qin Yining stood up and suddenly thought that Qiu Feishan's pregnancy should be complete. Mu Jinghu and Qiu Feishan didn't have any elders by their side. Even if Tian Jizi wasn't locked up, she might not be reliable. Although there were nannies at home who knew how to give birth for many years, they didn't have any experience. It was normal for them to panic when they encountered something. Qin Yining hurriedly said, Quick, quick, quick. Perhaps Mrs. Mu is about to give birth. Bing Tang, accompany me to take a look. Yes. Everyone responded and hurriedly went to prepare. As Qin Yining changed his clothes, he ordered Bing Tang and Ji Yun to bring everything that should be brought. Afraid that Qiu Feishan wasn't prepared, he even brought along one of the family's nannies. After leaving the house, they got into the carriage and sped all the way to the Mu family. Seeing that Qin Yining had brought people over, the Mu family's servants hurriedly led the way inside. Qin Yining arrived at the main room and saw Being standing in the corridor, jumping up and down to instruct the servant girl to boil water. He hurriedly asked, How's your Mrs. Mu? Did you invite a doctor and a midwife? Also, where's your master? When Being saw Qin Yining, it was as if she saw her savior. Wang Fei, you're here. Being curtsied and spoke as if she was pouring beans. Mrs. Mu is having a fit and looks very uncomfortable. We've already invited 2 midwives, but the doctor hasn't arrived yet. My master went to the barracks last night and hasn't returned yet. Mrs. Mu is due to give birth in these 2 days, but my master still went out. It's really. Mrs. Mu was having a fit just now, and this servant was really flustered. This servant doesn't know anything, so the first thing I thought of was to ask for your help. My Mrs. Mu trusts you the most. Qin Yining smiled and said, The good relationship between the Tong family is naturally not ordinary. Don't panic, I brought a doctor here. I was afraid that you didn't invite a wet nurse, so I even brought my brother's wet nurse. Don't worry, your Mrs. Mu will be fine. When Being heard this, she was so moved that tears almost fell. She knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, Thank you, Wang Fei. Thank you, Wang Fei. You're welcome. Quickly get up and arrange for them to prepare more hot water. Being nodded and hurriedly went to arrange it. Qi Nining asked Bing Tang to take a look inside and then arranged for someone to report to the barracks. She herself went to the delivery room to visit Qiu Feishan. At the same time, the situation in the barracks was not easy. Pang Shao had already changed back to his daily service. The substitute, who replaced him, had already finished his work and returned to being Jinghu Wei. At this time, he and Huzi stood behind Pang Shao, one on the left and one on the right. Chapter 878. There was only one simple sentence on the imperial edict. By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees, the south has been pacified. Return to the capital as soon as possible. Xia Yu cupped his hands and said, replying to Wang Yi, Your Majesty has sent 7 oral edicts urging you to return to the capital. When we received the first oral edict, this old man and brother Su discussed it and decided to temporarily claim illness. We didn't expect Your Majesty to send 6 oral edicts within a month. Looking at the time, he didn't wait for a reply before sending people over. The 7th oral edict also ordered the eunuch to personally visit you. Fortunately, the eunuch didn't find any flaws. That's right. Thanks to Brother Xie's disguise, the eunuch didn't notice anything strange. Su Weiji also said, however, Your Majesty sent this edict, which means he can't wait any longer. Xia Yu added, can't wait any longer is a euphemism. Your Majesty's current situation should be that the Emperor is furious. If Wang Yi doesn't respond quickly, Your Majesty's next edict might not just be urging you to return. Pang Shao nodded. How could he not know what Xia Yu said? His fingers lightly tapped the table. The orange candlelight in the tent reflected the outline of his handsome face. He looked at the bright yellow imperial edict on the table. After a long time, he said, It looks like I have to make plans to return to the capital. Wang Yi plans to return. But you've been running the South Pacifying Army for so long. Everything has just gotten on the right track. If you return now, Your Majesty can arrange for other people. The South Pacifying Army might not be as loyal to you as the Tiger Army. I'm also clear on this point. However, things aren't as bad as I expected. Pang Shao smiled confidently. This king is confident that he has some skill in leading troops. Although he can't compare to the Tiger Army's feelings, the South Pacifying Army won't be so bad as to not recognize people in the blink of an eye. Xia Yu and Su Weiji also nodded. They had to admit that Pang Shao had a unique talent when it came to leading troops. He also had an exceptionally convincing temperament. On the battlefield, he had always been at the front and at the back. He would never disregard the lives of any of his soldiers. He saved the wounded soldiers, but for those who were injured and could no longer be soldiers, he didn't care if they were given some money by others. Many soldiers who were disabled like that would become burdens to their families when they returned home. How many years could a small amount of compensation last? However, Pang Shao would never give up on them from the very beginning. Qin Yining even arranged for the wounded soldiers to work in his own farm. Who knew how many wounded soldiers he had raised? Even for those who died in battle, Pang Shao would privately send the compensation that De Zhou didn't give. He would never allow his brothers who died in battle to close their eyes. In the eyes of the enemy, Pang Shao was an evil spirit who killed without batting an eyelid. However, in the eyes of the people of De Zhou, he was a hero who opened up new territory and pacified the world. He was a cornerstone that supported the stability of the country. That was why Li Qitian was so afraid of him. Since this matter had been decided, Pang Shao asked Huzi, has Yuan Yujiang been locked up? Yes. Huzi nodded and said, it has been handled properly. Wang Yi, you don't have to worry. Has young Master Mu come to see his martial uncle recently? Xia Yu smiled and said, he came today. He hasn't left yet. Pang Shao smiled and nodded. He stood up and said, "I'll go find him." Unexpectedly, before Pang Xiao could find Mu Jinghu, someone rushed in from outside to report, "Wang Yi, Wang Fei has sent someone to report that Mrs. Mu is about to give birth. She wants young Master Mu to return quickly." Pang Xiao was stunned. He hurriedly strode out of Tian Jizi's room to find Mu Jinghu. Mu Jinghu was chatting with Tian Jizi through the door at this moment. When he heard the footsteps from outside, he also took offense. However, as the footsteps came closer, he and Tian Jizi both stopped talking and turned to look at the door. "Blockhead, why are you here at this time?" Mu Jinghu said happily, "You're back." "Yes." "Hey, this isn't the time to talk about this. Your wife is about to give birth. Go back quickly." Mu Jinghu looked as if he was struck by lightning. He said blankly, Really? Of course it's true. Sister Yi just sent someone to tell you. Why aren't you going back home?" Yes. Mu Jinghu spun around on the spot. As if he had just regained his senses, he turned around and told Tian Jizi, "Martial uncle, I'll leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, he ran past Pang Xiao like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Pang Xiao thought of the day when Qin Yining gave birth. Perhaps he was as silly as Mu Jinghu. He couldn't help but shake his head in amusement and quickly walked out. Tian Jizi, who was a door away, pressed her ear against the door and heard the footsteps outside. She angrily slammed the door with both hands and said, "Come back, hey! What's wrong with you two? Why haven't you let me out since you've settled the matter? Come back." However, her voice echoed in the corridor, but no one responded. Tian Jizi angrily sat back down at the table, eating snacks while sulking. By the time Pang Xiao and Mu Jinghu rode their horses to the Mu residence, the sky was already dark. The bright moon hung high in the sky, its silvery white light covered by the bright red lanterns in the residence. Walking in the outer courtyard, Mu Jinghu's hands and feet turned cold. He looked back at Pang Xiao and said anxiously, "What should we do? I heard that when a woman gives birth, it's like walking through the gates of hell. Why am I a little scared? Why is this residence so quiet? Will anything happen? Don't talk nonsense." Pang Xiao urged, "You're still far away, what do you expect to hear? Why aren't you going inside?" "Oh, what about you?" Pang Xiao was angered by Mu Jinghu's silly look and laughed, "I'm a man outside, how can I enter your residence? Why aren't you going inside?" Oh. Mu Jinghu seemed to have just woken up. He leaped onto the wall and disappeared without a trace. Huzi followed Pang Xiao here. When he saw Mu Jinghu's appearance, he laughed until his stomach hurt. Pang Xiao also found it funny. However, when Qin Yining gave birth, he was probably not much better than Mu Jinghu. Qiu Feishan's body was still healthy, unlike Qin Yining's suffering. That night, the baby's loud cries spread throughout the residence. "Congratulations, Master, it's a young master." The midwife trotted out to announce the good news. The old capital was already very cold in the middle of November. Mu Jinghu was spinning in the courtyard outside, but the steam coming out of her head was dense. Hearing this, he rushed into the delivery room with a whoosh. Qin Yining was holding a hand warmer and asking the midwife about Qiu Feishan's situation. He heard a burst of happy laughter coming from the room, followed by Mu Jinghu's silly voice, "Shanshan, I'm a father. You're a mother." This silly look made everyone laugh. The midwife smiled and said, "Madam is young and strong. She usually pays attention to taking care of herself. Princess, don't worry, everything is fine." Qin Yining was finally relieved. Hearing the joyful noise in the room, she left the inner residence of the Mu family with a smile. When he saw Pang Xiao in the outer courtyard, Qin Yining smiled and said, Jiu Feishan gave birth to a son, we should also prepare a congratulatory gift. What you said, we came in a hurry and didn't have time to prepare. Pang Xiao turned around and said to Huzi, send someone to tell Tian Jizi the good news. Huzi smiled and nodded, then ran away. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining left the Mu residence side by side. At this time, everyone in the residence was celebrating, especially Mu Jinghu, who was probably laughing silly. The two of them didn't want to disturb him. Chapter 879. Qin Yining propped herself up with her arms. Her soft, black hair fell from her shoulders onto the light-colored mattress. We just came back. Why is he here already? Did something happen to the Chiu family? Pang Xiao pulled up the quilt for her and said with a smile, he won't. If something happened, he would have arranged for someone to report to me. Qin Yining suddenly understood. That's right. Why don't you go and take a look? Yes, go to sleep first. Don't wait for me. If anything happens, I'll send someone to call you. Pang Xiao grabbed his clothes and put them on. Qin Yining lay down on her side. She hugged the blanket and looked at Pang Xiao's tall and slender back. She covered her mouth and yawned. I know. You should wear more clothes. Pang Xiao, who was striding out, stopped when he heard this. He came back and grabbed a large robe to put on. His large hand caressed Qin Yining's cheek. Go to sleep. Be good. Qin Yining smiled and rubbed her face against Pang Xiao's palm. Her eyelids gradually grew heavy and she fell asleep quickly. Pang Xiao looked at her exquisite side profile and couldn't help but reveal a warm smile. He tucked her in before quietly walking out of the inner room. When Qin Yining opened her eyes early the next morning, she was in Pang Xiao's arms. His arms were around her waist and he held her tightly in his arms. His legs were clamped around her cold feet. She leaned against his warm and strong body and closed her eyes comfortably. She was a bit afraid of the cold, especially in this weather. Even the tip of her nose was cold when she breathed. She didn't want to leave the bed even more. Qin Yining didn't want to move. She quietly looked up at Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao closed his eyes. His eyelashes were very long and his eyebrows were relaxed. His thin lips were slightly opened. He looked a bit like a child. She smiled softly. Her eyes were full of love and gentleness as she looked at him. What are you looking at? Pang Xiao suddenly spoke and turned over to press her down. Little miss, you've been looking at me for so long. Could it be that you have some unspeakable thoughts about me? Qin Yining rested his arms on his shoulders and smiled with his almond-shaped eyes. Yes, I have some unspeakable thoughts. Young Lang Jun, you're so handsome. Do you want to be my Lang Jun? Pang Xiao was stunned for a moment, and then she laughed happily. Her laughter shook her chest, and Qin Yining also laughed with her. Her eyes were curved like two crescent moons. The morning light shone in through the light-colored gauze curtain, and her porcelain white skin seemed to be suffused with a soft halo. That kind of gentle and pure beauty, and also inadvertently revealed a charm that seduced one's mind. Pang Xiao's eyes darkened. He pressed against her soft body and sucked on her lips. The two of them are like two crossed necks. After a long while, she finally stopped, panting. Qin Yining nestled in his arms. Why did Mr. Mu come to see you last night? When Pang Xiao heard this, he burst out laughing. He wrote more than 10 pages of paper, and on it were all the names that he had thought of before. He couldn't make up his mind, so he came to see me. Qin Yining said in surprise, he asked you to help him choose the names. Pang Xiao nodded. Yes, he said that I have experience. You didn't see how he was like. The names he came up with were so difficult to explain in a few words. It's not good for me to name the children directly. When I saw that he was struggling between White Tiger and Celestial Wolf, I was simply speechless. Qin Yining chuckled when she heard this. You're still laughing at him. Back then, I don't know who it was that gathered his strategists and seriously studied for half a day in order to name his son. In any case, Mr. Mu only asked you, a good friend, to discuss it. He didn't force unrelated people to help him think of names. Pang Zhao's face turned red when he heard this. He said stubbornly, if he had an advisor, do you think he wouldn't ask for help? What happened in the end? What name was he given? He couldn't really be called Mu White Tiger or Mu Celestial Wolf, right? Wouldn't that make him a beast? Pang Zhao smiled and said, I advised him to ask for Boss Chou's opinion. Besides, his martial uncle is also an expert in divination. He might be able to calculate a good name based on the birth characters. When he heard this, he went to the military camp overnight. Qin Yining couldn't stop laughing. He turned around and said, no matter what the child's name is, we have to prepare some practical items before sending them over. We can't be careless. I'll leave it to you. The two of them got up and washed up. Just as they were about to eat breakfast, someone outside said, Mr. Mu is here. Qin Yining smiled and said, I think he has already thought of a name. Pang Zhao also smiled. He instructed someone to prepare another set of cutlery and went out to welcome Mu Jinghu. Qin Yining sat at the square table and waited. Not long after, he saw Mu Jinghu and Pang Zhao walking side by side. As they walked, Mu Jinghu pulled Pang Zhao and said something. When the two of them came closer, Qin Yining heard the last few sentences. So, martial uncle said that he would give the name Yan. He said that brother Yan's birth characters lacked fire, so this name was the best. He also said that he lacked an intelligent and brave adoptive father in his life. I thought that you were the only one who was both intelligent and brave, so I came to find you. Qin Yining smiled and stood up. You've already decided to call him Mu Yan? Yes. Shan Shan also said that this name was good. My brother Yan wants to acknowledge you as his adoptive parents. What do you think? Although Pang Zhao felt that Tian Jizi was probably talking nonsense, he would not reject him based on his relationship with Mu Jinghu. It's our honor. Qin Yining and Pang Zhao thought of the same thing. They looked at each other and smiled. If that's the case, I'll have to give you a big gift during the third bath. I can't let brother Yan call me his adoptive mother in the future for nothing. Mu Jinghu smiled very foolishly. It was obvious that he was still immersed in the joy of becoming a father. Pang Zhao invited him to eat. Mu Jinghu did not stand on ceremony. He smiled and talked about how cute and beautiful his son was as he ate. It was rare for Qin Yining to see Mu Jinghu like this. After having a son, he seemed to be 10 years younger. They did not care about not talking while eating. They chatted with Mu Jinghu. Halfway through the meal, Ji Yun suddenly walked in quickly. He bent his knees and said, Wang Yi, your subordinate wants to see you. Pang Zhao did not have any intention of avoiding Mu Jinghu. He asked directly, is he from the military camp? Ji Yun was bold and said directly, Wang Yi, he's Jinghu Wei who came back from Huichuan County. Pang Zhao and Qin Yining's expressions became serious. The two of them did not have time to eat. Mu Jinghu also felt that something was wrong. He followed them to the front hall. When the elite tiger guard saw Pang Zhao, he respectfully saluted. Under Pang Zhao's signal, he said bluntly, replying to Your Highness, after this subordinate arrived at Huichuan County and investigated carefully, this subordinate did not find anything abnormal about that place. Pang Zhao frowned and said, Tell me more. Yes. The The construction of the Imperial Mausoleum in Heartwarming County has stopped. There are a few open spaces near the Imperial Mausoleum that are used to build sheds. The other party is using stones. At this time, there are only a few workers guarding the stones. The Imperial Court has not allocated any money and Heartwarming County has no county magistrate. Without a leader, the situation in the county can be said to be bleak. Chapter 880. This result made Pang Shao somewhat surprised. Mrs. Liao's subordinates wouldn't go to Luzhang for no reason to buy such a dangerous place as the county magistrate. There must be something wrong with Heartwarming County. But it was obvious that Jinghu Wei's ability to investigate was not outstanding. Pang Shao nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Go and rest first." "Yes." The man cupped his hands in salute and quickly retreated. Qin Yining said, "It seems that the other party is very secretive. It won't be easy to find clues." Pang Shao nodded and said, "In fact, no one is more suitable than the Qingtian Alliance to hide in the city and inquire about some information. Look at my subordinates, you can tell at a glance when they stand in the crowd." "That's true." Qin Yining nodded. Although the Qingtian Alliance is a group of people with lofty ideals, their ability to inquire about information is indeed first class. It's just that the situation is unclear. We don't know if Mrs. Liao and her 2 men are still alive, or if they are both alive. We also don't know if they are still in contact with the Qingtian Alliance. If Mrs. Liao is still alive, Liao Zhibing will definitely side with his wife. I really don't dare to take this risk. The people of the Qingtian Alliance might be loyal to her. But since ancient times, wealth moved people's hearts, not to mention such a large amount of wealth that even Li Qitian couldn't ignore. Who didn't want to sit on a mountain of gold and silver and spend it all their life? Who didn't want to leave behind good fortune for their future generations? Qin Yining had been in the city for many years and had seen the nature of people in the face of disaster. She wouldn't judge people with malice, but she also wouldn't think of people as too selfless. Pang Shao looked down and pondered for a moment. The silver-masked spy's assassination and spying skills are not weak. But this time, I want them to follow our family. Qin Yining nodded and said, "I think so too. We won't be around, so we can rest assured with more people protecting our family. Father, they will be leaving in a few days. We can't let the silver-masked spy go out again." Pang Shao put his hand on the edge of the table and tapped his slender index finger on the table. After a while, he said, "If it doesn't work, I will go there myself." Qin Yining frowned. "You're going there personally?" "Yes, this is a serious matter. We can't afford to make any mistakes." Pang Shao said in a deep voice, "The whereabouts of the treasure must be tracked down. If we can get it, that would be the best. If not, I'd rather let Mrs. Liao and her group get the treasure than give it to the emperor. Once he gets his hands on the treasure, he won't care about the disaster of war. His priority will be to exterminate us." "That's right. The world has already been decided. Now, the person who threatens his position is you. He will definitely destroy you at all costs." Pang Shao smiled bitterly. "In the end, I'm not that noble. Like me, I'm also selfish. I just want to live. Maybe in the emperor's eyes, I'm the kind of existence that will endanger his life. That's why he spares no effort for me." Qin Yining saw Pang Shao sighing and couldn't help but sigh. Then, he said seriously, "What is noble? What is selfish? We're just ordinary people. Don't force yourself to be immortals. Do you think we're good people if we stretch our necks and wait for Li to chop us up? That's not good. That's stupid. Since ancient times, history has been written by the winner. You think sacrificing yourself for the world's peace is for the good of the people, but who can guarantee that the history books won't smear you? What's more, you have a large group of brothers following you. You also have family. Do you want them to be buried with you? At this point, Qin Yining stood up and looked up at Pang Shao. His eyes were particularly firm. Don't think so much. Good and evil will naturally be judged by the world. Reality has forced us to walk on this path, so we can only continue. What is right? What is wrong? There's no right or wrong in this world. There's only regret. As Qin Yining spoke, his eyes were as gentle and warm as the moon. His expression was so firm that it surprised him. He didn't expect that Qin Yining had already thought it through so thoroughly when he hadn't figured it out yet. Mu Jinghu had been listening at the side for a long time and more or less understood what they were going to do. He nodded and said, Jishi, I think your wife is right. You're just carrying too much burden in your heart. Upon hearing this, Pang Shao looked at Mu Jinghu. Mu Jinghu said, in this world, you don't have to bear anyone's surname. The lives of the people are not your responsibility alone. Don't tell me that if you don't do anything, people won't grow old, get sick, and die. I understand that you don't want to hurt the innocent, but are the innocent only the people on the other side? Aren't your own family members innocent as well? Although Mu Jinghu was a kind person, he was naturally influenced by Tian Jizi after interacting with her for a long time. He didn't value human lives that much. Pang Shao nodded thoughtfully. The situation was changing, and his inherent thinking should also change. Otherwise, he would be harming others and himself. Then it's settled. When the matter with father-in-law is settled, I'll set off to take a look. When the time comes, get someone to disguise as me as usual. You stay here and observe for me. Pang Shao instructed Qin Yining. Qin Yining nodded. He was a little reluctant to let Pang Shao go. However, he also knew that when the two families left, only the husband and wife would be left to support each other. Perhaps in the future, there would be many times when they would have to act separately. Chapter 881. When Master Zhong said this, he was also very surprised. Although he didn't see the situation that day with his own eyes, he heard Qin Yining mention the situation that day when they were chatting. He could imagine how serious the situation in the desert was. After being interrogated, the people couldn't tell the direction and there was no water. How did they get out? He didn't know how others did it. He knew that he absolutely couldn't do it. Qin Yining frowned and asked, did these two people contact Hall Master Liao and Hall Master Qiao, or did they contact someone else in the alliance? Did they say what they were going to do? Replying to Princess, they contacted Hall Master Liao. Hall Master Liao knew that when Mrs. Liao died in the desert, these two people were with her. He felt that something was wrong and discussed it with Hall Master Qiao. They didn't dare to make this matter public. After the two of them discussed it, they quietly sent me a message. Listening to Hall Master Liao's meaning, he felt that these two people were too suspicious. He was afraid that they would do something related to the treasure. Because he was afraid of delaying your matter, he asked me to quickly report back to you and ask for your instructions on what to do next. Qin Yining slowly nodded and fell into deep thought. She didn't doubt the Qing-Tian alliance, but she was worried that some people in the alliance couldn't resist the temptation of human instincts and greed. Who would want such a large amount of treasure that could be theirs? The other party contacted Liao Zhibing probably because of his relationship with Mrs. Liao. If Mrs. Liao went, Liao Zhibing, like most people, would think that he should have a share of the treasure or simply think that the treasure should belong to him alone. Even Qin Yining guessed so. But now, Liao Zhibing told her such an important news. If Liao Zhibing had the heart to monopolize the treasure, he only needed to keep this matter to himself and hide it from her. Why would he ask Master Zhong to send her a message? Liao Zhibing had always been trustworthy. He even knew where Shiyu was. For such a long time, she didn't see Liao Zhibing take revenge on her because of Mrs. Liao. Even when she rescued her father, it was thanks to Liao Zhibing that they arrived in time. Now, Liao Zhibing hurriedly asked Master Zhong to send the message as soon as he got the news. The tenant proved his loyalty. This made Qin Yining, who was on guard, feel a little embarrassed. She was really too narrow-minded. Qin Yining thought for a moment, then signaled for Master Zhong to take a seat. He went outside to find a servant of the Mu family and said, "Ask Wang Yi to come here. Tell him that I have something to discuss with him." That person hurriedly saluted and walked away with a face full of reverence. Not long after, Pang Xiao and Mu Jinghu arrived. Master Zhong quickly got up and saluted Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao smiled and helped him up with one hand. "Please get up." He then turned around and introduced Mu Jinghu to him. "This is Mr. Mu." Master Zhong and Mu Jinghu had met a few times before, so they greeted each other naturally. Mu Jinghu ordered the servants to serve hot tea again. The four of them sat down according to their identities. After dismissing the servants, Pang Xiao arranged for someone to stand guard outside. Qin Yining asked Master Zhong to tell him in detail about Liao Zhibing's report. Pang Xiao was a little surprised when he heard it. He then sighed and said, "Leader Liao is a real hero." "Yes." Qin Yining nodded. Master Zhong had always been someone Qin Yining trusted. In the future, when he passed on information to the Qingtian Alliance, he would have to trouble Master Zhong. Therefore, Qin Yining did not avoid him and said directly, "In this case, we can rest assured and leave the investigation of Huichuan County to Leader Liao." Pang Xiao said with a smile, "That's what I think too. Not only can we inquire about Huichuan County's news, but I also think that with Hall Master Liao's identity, we can also get in touch with those two people. With Leader Liao around, we won't be in the dark." "You're right." Qin Yining sighed and said, "It's my fault for not paying attention to the names of Mrs. Liao's attendants. Otherwise, we would have one more clue to investigate." Pang Xiao smiled at Qin Yining to appease him. "Don't be too hard on yourself. In that situation, you almost starved to death in the desert. You've done well to survive. What else do you want from yourself?" Qin Yining shook his head and did not say anything to ruin Pang Xiao's mood. In fact, in her position, she could not be asked of like an ordinary woman. If she really only wanted to help her husband and teach her children like an ordinary woman, the grass on her grave would be 3 feet tall by now. Although Master Zhong only understood half of it, he also knew that something happened in Huichuan County, and it was related to the two people in the Qingtian Alliance who secretly contacted Liao Zhibing. Master Zhong said, "Forgive me for saying too much. I have dealt with Mr. Liao many times. This person has a clear face and a righteous aura. Although he comes from a humble background, he is not a treacherous person. He is very serious when doing things. I personally think that this person can be trusted." Pang Xiao loved Qin Yining and naturally respected the people around Qin Yining. Not to mention, Master Zhong was an old man who followed Qin Yining in his early years. Master Zhong said so. "I think Leader Liao is trustworthy." Pang Xiao lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, she smiled and said, "It seems that it saves me the effort of going out. Moreover, if I go to Huichuan County, not to mention the long journey, the target is too obvious. If I ask Mr. Liao to inquire, I'm afraid I can get some different results." "I think so too." Qin Yining said, "The ability of the people in the Qingtian Alliance to sneak into the market to inquire about information is first class. Moreover, the other party has the intention to contact Mr. Liao. Mr. Liao only needs to pretend to comply and you can get a lot of unexpected information." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "That's right. Master Zhong came at the right time, and the information is too useful. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have already gone out. Head shopkeeper Zhong hurriedly stood up and bowed, saying, "This is this old man's duty." Wang Fei once saved this old man's entire family. This old man does not dare delay this matter in the slightest. Pang Xiao thanked Great Manager Zhong again. Then, he personally escorted him to the door. Great Manager Zhong's heart was filled with joy and gratitude as he received such a courteous reception. His face blushed with excitement. When Pang Xiao came back, Mu Jinghu asked, "Your whole family is leaving?" "Yes." Pang Xiao said bluntly, "I'm worried that it's dangerous for them to stay here. Even if they have nothing to do in a short time, it's inevitable that they will be restrained when they do things. Now that there is a safe place, it's better to let the whole family go to a safe place." Mu Jinghu frowned and pointed a finger at his temple. "What you said makes sense. I also want Shanshan and Brother Yen to go to a safe place. But she won't agree. She wants to take back the Chiu family and avenge her grandfather. I can understand her feelings." Qin Yining smiled bitterly. "When the news of my father's accident came back, I couldn't wait to burn Yangxin Palace Hall directly. That kind of feeling, you can only understand it after experiencing it. It's that kind of feeling that I would rather fight with my own body and bones to vent my anger. Otherwise, I will live in self-blame and regret for the rest of my life." Pang Xiao patted Qin Yining's shoulder with heartache. He had asked Ji Yun and Bing Tang behind her back. That was an extremely difficult time, but he was far away in the south and could not help her at all. She could only rely on herself for everything. Mu Jinghu said, "Of course I know how she feels. Brother Yen is still so young now. Even if I say that Brother Yen should go to a safe place with your family, I'm afraid Shanshan won't agree." Qin Yining sighed and shook his head. Sometimes when things are really forced to that extent, even if a mother can't bear to, she has to. But the situation is not so critical now, and Fei Shan is not the main target. You just need to be vigilant, there's no need to take action now. You're right. Mu Jinghu thought for a while and said, "Your family has all left, what do you plan to do in the future? Continue to stay in the south?" Pang Xiao heard and looked at Qin Yining. "Sister Yi, I haven't told you that your majesty has ordered me to return to the capital, right?" Qin Yining's smile froze on his face and he slowly shook his head. Pang Xiao told him about Li Qitian's oral instructions and the imperial edict during their absence. "Your majesty must be very angry." Qin Yining's heart was cold, but he smiled freely and joked, "When you were looking for me, you went against 33 imperial edicts. Now, with these 8 imperial edicts, you can be considered the first person in this dynasty." Pang Xiao was originally worried that Qin Yining would be scared or worried, but seeing her like this, he couldn't help but feel proud. He laughed and said, "I can be considered the first person in history to have gone against 41 imperial edicts. If I say it out loud, it would be a crime against the whole world. Any one of my disobedience would be enough to chop my head off. When I return to the capital this time, I'm afraid that I'll be impeached the moment I see him." Qin Yining recalled the 10 major crimes that she and Pang Xiao had been impeached for when they returned to the capital. Now that you've gained a foothold in the south, this is something that His Majesty did not expect and is most unwilling to see. When we return to the capital, we must make careful preparations." Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao inquiringly. "Invite Sir Xia and Sir Su to come over another day. We can discuss together and come up with a plan. It's best to list out the problems that we may encounter when we return to the capital and then think of countermeasures to ensure our safety." "You're right. I plan to invite father-in-law first. Although father-in-law already has the intention to retire, his reputation as the wise pan and is not just for show." The two of them discussed for a while and it was already noon. Mu Jinghu invited Pang Xiao and Qin Yining to have a meal together. After the meal, they began the ritual of washing the third day. There was an incense table in the front hall and 13 statues of the goddess of eyesight, goddess of pox, goddess of childbirth, blue cloud progenitor, and others were enshrined. The incense burner was filled with millet. The midwife lit 3 incense sticks and prayed 3 times while chanting. Chapter 882. Mu Jinghu and Qiu Feishan, husband and wife, did not have any relatives or friends. Only Pang Xiao, his wife, and their 2 children came. Qiu Feishan simply called all the respectable maids in the house to come and add to the pot together. When someone added longan, the midwife said, "Little Gongzi is the reincarnation of Wen Chu Xing." When someone added lotus seeds, the midwife immediately said, "He gave birth to a son." Qin Yining didn't care. The gold and silver added to the pot were all given to the midwife. The silver and golden melon seeds were all added to the pot. The midwife's eyes were shining, and even her voice was a lot louder when she said auspicious words. After adding the pot, the midwife quickly bathed Brother Yan. The baby's tender and white skin was touched by the midwife's rough hand, and he immediately cried. The midwife even laughed loudly, "Sound the pot. Sound the pot. Good luck. Ji Xiang Ru Yi." After a set of procedures, Brother Yan's face was red from crying. When the midwife and the old mama took out the sacrificial paper money and burned it, and cleaned up the yellow and white things, Qiu Feishan hurriedly urged Mu Jinghu to carry the baby to her. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao took Brother Zhao and Brother Han and left. On the way back, the 2 discussed for a while. When they reached home, Qin Yining wrote a letter to Liao Zhibing, and asked him to inquire about the news in Huichuan County. Pang Xiao ordered someone to give the letter to Master Zhou, and then he arranged for someone to bring Xiaoyu and Su Weiji to the residence. In the evening, the study in the outer courtyard was brightly lit. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were already sitting in the hall and waiting. When they heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside the door, the 2 quickly stood up. The curtain was lifted, and Pang Xiao led Qin Huayuan in first. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji respectfully swept the floor. "Greetings, Duke Qin." Qin Huayuan humbly returned the greeting. "Sirs, there's no need to be so courteous. I'm not an official of the cabinet, so I don't deserve to be addressed as such." "You deserve it, you deserve it. Duke Qin has the world in his heart and is wise and resourceful. You are worthy of this title." Pang Xiao smiled and invited Qin Huayuan to take a seat. "Father-in-law, please take a seat." Qin Huayuan nodded with a smile, then turned around and invited everyone to take a seat. Qin Yining stood behind Qin Huayuan and Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao said, "Today, I invited father-in-law and the 2 sirs here to discuss the matter of returning to the capital." Qin Huayuan sighed softly. Under the light, he looked at Pang Xiao with a pair of eyes that seemed to have seen through the world. "Have you decided?" Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. "Father-in-law, I'm sure you know the situation and thoughts of Sister Yi and I. We have no way to retreat." How could Qin Huayuan not understand the difficulties in this? But in his heart, he still hoped that his children could stay away from danger. But reality and expectations often ran counter to each other. "Forget it. I originally wanted you to avoid conflict, but now that things have come to this, there's really no other choice." Qin Huayuan looked at Pang Xiao. His voice was gentle, but there was a bit of sharpness between his usually wise eyebrows. "Jishi, since you've made a decision, I'm sure you've thought about the future. Since you don't plan to avoid it, then you have to face it head-on. The most taboo in doing things is to waver. Since you can't bear it, you can't avoid it. What you have to do next is to completely remove the mountain above your head. Otherwise, you won't have a place to be buried. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were still guessing what kind of precious advice Qin Huaiyuan would give them. But no matter what plan they had, they couldn't escape the shackles of the monarch status. They didn't expect him to say such shocking things. Everyone knew what the mountain above Pang Zhao's head was. Qin Huaiyuan was right. Once they chose to face the imperial power, what they had to do was probably more difficult than overturning the mountain. Pang Zhao tilted his head and smiled. Father-in-law, I understand what you're saying. Qin Huaiyuan smiled and said, you don't have to feel too much pressure. I know you care about the safety of the people. Otherwise, over the years, you've had countless opportunities to point your sword at that person. You don't want to think about war, but you've been forced to create a lot of war. In this world, there are many things that can't be helped. Sometimes you and I feel that things can be planned and schemed, but who knows if your schemes are destined by the heavens. People's lives seem to be pushed forward by fate. Just like how I sowed dissension against the northern Ji kingdom in order to protect the Dayan. Just like how your father was feared by the imperial court and the northern Ji emperor took advantage of the situation to eliminate dissidents. Your current situation is just like your father's situation in the past. Your military achievements are splendid, your reputation is out there, and your achievements can't even describe the pressure you're putting on the emperor. You're a smart child. Since you've chosen to return to the capital, you've already thought it through. Once you've made your decision, there's no chance to regret it. If you regret your decision now, Sister Yi and all your subordinates who trust you and are willing to follow you will be buried with you. Qin Huaiyuan's words were extremely serious. Although they were a bit long-winded, they were words from the bottom of his heart. Pang Zhao could understand Qin Huaiyuan's thoughts. He also understood the meaning behind Qin Huaiyuan's seemingly unimportant words. Father-in-law, don't worry. I know what I want and what I should do. In the end, I'm not a noble and selfless person. Just like Sister Yi once said to me, there's no right or wrong in this world. Everyone's standpoint is different. It's not wrong for him to hide his bow after he's done with the birds, but it's also not wrong for me to fight against oppression for the sake of everyone around me. It's just that our standpoints are different. No one is more noble than the other. Qin Huaiyuan, Xiaoyu, and Su Weiji all looked at Qin Yining when they heard this. Qin Yining smiled slightly. Father, don't worry. Although the situation is tense, it's not to the point of death. I'm worried that your Majesty will find an excuse to impeach Wang Yi when we return to the capital this time. At that time, he'll be accused of disobeying the imperial edict and be punished for several crimes. I'm afraid it'll affect the foundation. Qin Huaiyuan nodded and smiled. Since you're able to bring it up, you must have some ideas. Let's hear them. Qin Huaiyuan's tone reminded Qin Yining of when she had yet to get married. She would often accompany her father in the study to chat. Every time, her father would patiently guide her. Whether it was how to get along with others in the inner residence or how to criticize the current situation, she would always be able to get the best answers from her father. Qin Yining's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Father, are you testing your daughter? Qin Huaiyuan clearly remembered those days as well. He couldn't help but smile even more warmly. Tell me about it. Let's discuss your ideas together. With father and the two teachers here, I'll throw a brick to attract Jade. I'll tell you my ideas so that everyone can discuss them together. Qin Yining deliberated for a moment before saying, what I mean is that before we arrive in the capital, we need to do two things. The first is to look for bargaining chips. The second is to build momentum. I'll talk about building momentum first. The study was completely silent. Qin Yining's voice wasn't loud, but each word was like pearls falling onto a jade plate, clear and audible. As Su Weiji and Xiaoyu listened, their bodies couldn't help but lean forward. Their eyes were full of contemplation and gradually flashed with light. Qin Huayuan stroked his beard with one hand, a slight smile on his face. Pang Xiao turned her head to look at Qin Yining's spirited appearance as he spoke with assurance. She couldn't hide her admiration and fondness for him. When Qin Yining finished explaining the plan in detail, Su Weiji clapped and said, "Wang Fei has thought it through thoroughly. You truly live up to the name of Duke Qin's bloodline. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call you a female Zhuge Liang." Xia Yu also said, "This plan is feasible. Even though it's somewhat risky, we'll have to face danger when we return this time. We're walking in the open, and your majesty has to protect his reputation. Naturally, it won't be as troublesome as traveling outside." Qin Huayuan nodded. This old man also has a few ideas. You must pay attention to them when you reach the capital. Qin Huayuan slowly explained all the possible accidents he thought of, as well as the solutions to those situations. Xia Yu and Su Weiji listened, occasionally asking questions or adding additional information. After the discussion, although the future was uncertain, they already had a plan in their hearts. At least, they now had a general direction and weren't completely in the dark. After discussing the matter, Pang Xiao respectfully inquired about the date Qin Huayuan would depart. Qin Huayuan sighed. Naturally, the earlier the better. It should be in the next few days. Even though we can communicate in the future, the road to the foot of the mountain is too high. It's too far for us to reach. In the future, you'll have to rely on yourselves. Standing up, Qin Huayuan cupped his hands in salute to Xia Yu and Su Weiji. In the future, I'll have to rely on the two of you. This old man will leave it to the two of you. Xia Yu and Su Weiji hurriedly dodged and respectfully returned the salute. Elder Qin, please don't be like this. The two of us are Wang Yi's aides. It's our duty to give advice to Wang Yi. Moreover, Wang Yi has always treated the two of us with sincerity and trust. To be able to follow Wang Yi's lead is the fortune of our lives. How can we accept Elder Qin's salute? This old man is acting as a father. The two of you are both my elders. Naturally, I can accept your salute." Qin Huayuan bowed again. The two sides returned the salute to each other. The scene was somewhat amusing, but more than that, they were emotionally moved. At this moment, Qin Yining truly realized that perhaps after this farewell, she and Qin Huayuan would never be able to meet again. Not only Qin Huayuan, but also her mother, her family, and her children. If they failed this time, she and Pang Xiao would be buried in the mountains and rivers, and her family would have to live in that oasis in the desert. "Father." Qin Yining went around the front. Lifting her skirt, she knelt down on both knees and kowtowed. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining also knelt down side by side and saluted. "Father, your daughter is unfilial. I can't make you worry less. I can't make you happy, and I even brought you far away from home. It's hard for you to return home, and I have to make you shoulder the fate of the entire family. I even have to ask you to help me take care of my children." Qin Yining's tears streamed down. "Your daughter feels guilty. If something happens to me, I'm afraid I won't be able to repay you in this life. Father, please take care of yourself. Eat more, wear more clothes, and take care of yourself. You don't have to worry about anything." Qin Yining kowtowed heavily as she spoke. Pang Xiao also followed suit and kowtowed. Chapter 883. Qin Yining nodded with tears in her eyes, trying her best to suppress her grief. She had returned to her family Qin for 5 years and had weathered many storms. Although she had spent more time with her parents than with them, she still had hope for the future. She knew that no matter how much suffering she went through, she would eventually have a chance to return home. This time, however, the road ahead was bleak. Such a life and death separation was truly heart-wrenching. Her parents, relatives, and her child, who was less than 2 years old. These were the most important people to her, but she might have to withdraw from their lives. It was rare for Qin Yining to be so fragile. In Pang Zhao's eyes, the way she restrained her tears was even more distressing than when she cried loudly. He really hoped that Qin Yining was an arrogant and domineering person. If she wasn't so sensible, why would she have to suffer so much? Father-in-law, this is all my fault. Pang Zhao kowtowed 3 times. Father-in-law, don't worry. This trip is not to throw away my life, but to make sure that the important people can live. I won't stake everything on a single throw. Even if there is a day when there is danger, as long as I am here, no one will be able to hurt Sister Yi. Even if it is a matter of life and death, I will use my life to protect her. I will never leave behind her. Father-in-law, please rest assured. Qin Huayuan nodded. He held back his tears and helped the 2 of them up. All right. All right, Father understands your intentions. We are not parting forever. Although it is difficult now, things have not reached that stage. After this separation, we will definitely meet again in the future. You and I don't have to be so pessimistic. Yes. Qin Yining and Pang Zhao said in unison. Xia Yu and Su Weiji couldn't help but feel sympathy for them. They promised Qin Huayuan, Duke Qin, please rest assured. The 2 of us will do our best to assist Wang Yi. We will not slack off in the slightest. I believe in the 2 of you. From now on, I will have to trouble the 2 of you. You flatter me. This is what we should do. After the family came to an agreement, Pang Zhao arranged for someone to send Xia Yu and Su Weiji back home. Qin Yining followed Qin Huayuan back to the inner residence. There was no one else on the road, so Qin Yining took the opportunity to ask, Father, will Aunt Chao still go with you this time? Qin Yining wanted to show concern for her father, but because she was a married daughter, it was not appropriate for her to directly ask her father about taking a concubine. She could only ask in a roundabout way. Qin Huayuan naturally understood what Qin Yining meant. He said bitterly, I wanted to ask her for her opinion, but she avoided me. She's been staying in the guest courtyard and refuses to come to the residence. I didn't want to bother her anymore. When Qin Yining heard Qin Huayuan take the initiative to talk about the details, he knew that Qin Huayuan was really confused. Even if Qin Huayuan was in a difficult situation, he wouldn't discuss it with the Sun clan, right? It was fine for brothers to talk about this, but with Qin Huayuan's personality, he definitely wouldn't embarrass himself in front of second uncle and third uncle. Otherwise, how would he be able to convince the family in the future? Therefore, when her father encountered such a troublesome matter, he didn't even have a place to talk. There is no doubt about Aunt Chao's sincerity towards you. This can be seen from how she has pursued you over the years. Back in Dian's capital, when Jishi's soldiers besieged the city and the capital was suffering from a drought, with Aunt Chao's skills, she could have just left us behind. However, she was willing to follow by your side and take the lead for you. Although my mother and I are both official wives and we don't want our husbands to take a concubine, we were moved by Aunt Chao's sincerity and dedication. My mother told me that she was so in love with you that she was willing to risk her life to protect the people important to you. She had saved the lives of our family members several times. Even she was moved by her. Father, I think it's not a disgrace for you to accept such a woman who is willing to give her all for you. If you don't take the initiative, you'll be letting down her deep feelings. Qin Huayuan blushed and lowered his eyes. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have said these things to his daughter. However, he was truly confused. I understand what you're saying. I'm not a cold-hearted person who can be moved. I also admire her. However, when I brought up this matter with her, she refused. Earlier, when I took a concubine for the sake of having an heir, I hurt your mother's heart. Your mother was born in a prestigious family and suffered a lot with me in her life. Now that I have such an excellent daughter like you, I don't insist on having a son. Naturally, I won't take a concubine for the sake of having an heir and make your mother sad. However, I didn't do this for the sake of having an heir. Qin Yining listened quietly to Qin Huaiyuan's words. She knew that her father usually spoke clearly, but this time, he was a little confused. This was enough to prove that Chao Yuqing's matter made her wise and thoughtful father confused. Since her father was willing to explain his thoughts to her, she didn't hold back. She took the opportunity to ask, I understand. You really appreciate Aunt Chao and like her, so you want to marry her as a concubine, right? Qin Huaiyuan nodded and looked a little uncomfortable. Qin Yining asked the question hidden in her heart, but father, Aunt Chao has expressed her feelings for you in front of you before. She is a straightforward person and never hides her feelings. She was so active at that time, so why didn't you accept her? She entered the manor as a concubine granted by your majesty. However, you would rather accept the other 4 concubines than be close to her. You even put her on a shelf. If I were Aunt Chao, I would also have resentment in my heart. I wouldn't nod as soon as you opened your mouth. Wouldn't that make her come at your command and leave at your command? Qin Huaiyuan listened to Qin Yining's analysis and gradually stopped. They were walking to the small lake in the back garden. To the right was the Shuoran house where Qin Yining lived. To the left was the old Madame's Xixiao garden, and to the inside was Xingning garden. The winter night was dark and windy. There were no stars and no moon. They could only rely on the lights of the Shuoran house to illuminate the path in front of them. The surface of the lake was pitch black, as if a lake of ink had gathered. Qin Huaiyuan pursed his lips and stood in place. He looked at the pitch-black lake and didn't know what to say for a moment. After a while, he said hoarsely, so that's how it is. I think that's what she was thinking. However, I didn't mean to look down on her. Qin Yining nodded and sighed. If father has any thoughts, you can tell Aunt Chao directly. Aunt Chao isn't an unreasonable person. I know. At that time, she came under the imperial edict. We were colleagues, so naturally I could only keep a respectful distance. Later, I didn't want to delay her. She wanted to be my bodyguard and didn't want to be a concubine. Of course, I agreed. There was no reason for me to force her to stay by my side when she didn't want to. Later on, when Great Yen was annihilated, our family had to go through countless tribulations before we finally arrived at Great Zhou. I knew our future was bleak, and we could become the sacrifice of the struggle between the 3 sects at any time. So, how could I drag her into the mire? She didn't want to be my concubine, she only wanted to be my bodyguard. She could leave at any time. She could have been free. Could it be that because of my own selfishness, she would be buried with me? It's only now that I'm about to live in seclusion in Shiyu and don't want to be involved in the mortal world anymore. My life is stable, so I wanted to mention this to her. However, she didn't want to. Forget it, forget it. This kind of thing can't be forced. I also have no reason to force her to be a concubine. Moreover, your mother has been with me for my entire life. I have indeed wronged her a lot. Qin Huaiyuan seemed to be talking to himself. It also seemed like he was venting his emotions. He couldn't find anyone to talk to about these personal matters. He could only talk to his daughter, who was like a close friend to him. Qin Huaiyuan turned around somewhat embarrassedly. Sister Yi, you, but before he could finish speaking, he saw an unexpected person behind Qin Yining. Qin Yining saw that his father's expression was strange and hurriedly turned around. He saw Chao Yuqing, who was wearing a sapphire blue cloak with a gray mouse fur collar. She was standing about 20 feet behind him. Her fair skin was like high-quality porcelain in the night. However, he couldn't see her expression clearly. He didn't know how long she had been with them and how much she had heard of their conversation. Chao Yuqing silently looked at Qin Huaiyuan. Qin Huaiyuan stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His hands slowly clenched behind his back. The two of them looked at each other in silence. Qin Yining had mixed feelings at this moment. She knew that she was facing a pair of lovers. However, when she thought of her mother, she felt that this was a kind of betrayal. From Chao Yuqing's point of view, she had been a secret agent since young and had been raised to be a killing machine. When she was young, her heart was tied to a man. She gave her heart to him, waited for him, and was even prepared to give up her life for him. Now, she finally saw the light of day. She didn't want to snatch the position of the official wife. All she wanted was the status of a concubine. What did she do wrong? From her father's point of view, there was nothing wrong with a man taking in a concubine. With her father's status and talent, it was only right for him to take in as many women as he liked. No one could blame him for it. However, from a mother's point of view, her husband, who loved her wholeheartedly, had also shared his affections with other women. She could only nod with a smile and promise that he could have other women at the same time, and that she would share her husband with other women. If she did not nod, then she would be unvirtuous, jealous, and guilty of the 7 sins. In order to maintain this family, to maintain the relationship between husband and wife, and to fulfill the other woman's wish, she could only pretend to be magnanimous against her heart and nod in agreement. Neither of them was wrong. They each had their own difficulties and grievances. However, Qin Yining's heart ached even more for her mother. Qin Yining knew that her way of thinking couldn't be accepted by the current ways of the world. However, she was full of regret. This world had never been fair to women. Qin Yining curtsied and quietly retreated, leaving the two of them alone. She didn't immediately return to Snow Pear Courtyard. Instead, she went directly to Xingning Garden. The Sun Clan was taking Mother Jean and the maidservants in the house to check their luggage. When they saw Qin Yining, the Sun Clan smiled and said, "Sister Yi, you're here. Have you finished discussing business with your father?" Chapter 884. That's right. I asked your father and prepared a lot of things that Siya doesn't have. Otherwise, we won't be able to find it. Sister Yi, what kind of place is Siya? Qin Yining saw that the Sun Clan was so nervous and couldn't help but feel distressed. That place was discovered by people who lived in seclusion in the early years to avoid disaster. The oasis can be said to be boundless, and survival and reproduction are not a problem. It's just that the climate there is different from here. Mother, you have to prepare more medicinal herbs. When the time comes, the family will definitely not be able to acclimatize. Yes, your father told me. I've prepared all these. The Sun Clan took out a small booklet and showed it to Qin Yining. I don't know what to prepare. This is your father's list. It saves me the trouble of thinking. Qin Yining carefully looked at the contents listed in the booklet. She couldn't help but sigh in admiration of Qin Huaiyuan's meticulousness and foresight. She returned the booklet to the Sun Clan. With father's arrangements, everything will naturally be foolproof. That's right. Your father is good about this. He never needs me to worry about anything. He always thinks of everything first. The Sun Clan stroked Qin Yining's messy hair and smiled. How long will it take for you and Wang Yi to do something outside? How long will it take to return? 1 month. 2 months. Qin Yining looked at her mother's gentle face and felt a wave of sadness in her heart. How could she tell the Sun Clan that they might not be able to return this time? She couldn't show any strange emotions, lest her mother worry. I'm not sure, but don't worry, mother. After the matter is settled, it's easy for me and Wang Yi to go to Siya or for you to come back. Besides, although Sia is in the desert, I have people who know the way. It won't be too troublesome for them to bring back letters and all kinds of necessities. The Sun Clan member smiled and nodded. I know. Since your father wants the whole family to move, he must have made all the necessary preparations. It's just that our family rarely gets together. How long has it been since we last met, and we have to separate again? Perhaps she also realized that her words would make Ong Chin Ening sad. Sunshire smiled and waved her hand, saying, but don't worry, Brother Zhao and Brother Han are by our side. You don't have to worry about them at all. We will take good care of them. There are so many people in the family. If everyone takes care of them, Brother Zhao and Brother Han will enjoy endless blessings. Not to mention, your father will personally teach them. By the time you come back, these two brats will have improved a lot. I know, Mother. I'm relieved to leave the child in your care. Chin Ening hugged the Sun Clan's arm and leaned against the Sun Clan's shoulder. After Wang Yi and I are done with our work, we'll think of a way to visit you at Sia. All right, but I also have something to tell you. What is it? Chin Ening asked with a smile. It's about your mother-in-law. Although your mother-in-law was sent to the countryside to recuperate by Wang Yi, no matter what she said or did, she is still Wang Yi's biological mother. Wang Yi dotes on you now and stands by your side. Who knows if he will regret it in the future? Take advantage of this time. After you bring your mother-in-law back, you should apologize to her and give her a way out. After all, we're all family. If you don't make a big fuss, you'll lose face and make His Highness think you're mean. Chin Ening didn't expect the Sun Clan to persuade her. If it was 3 or 4 years ago, her mother would definitely support her to fight the Yao clan to the end. After all, the Sun Clan was the one who wanted to go back to her mother's family. After all these years, her mother had been through adversity. The Sun Clan had changed so much. Chin Ening believed that with her grandmother's guidance, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage in front of Chao Yuqing. Mother, I also have something to tell you. Go ahead. The Sun Clan looked at Chin Ening curiously. Chin Ening thought for a moment and said, if Chao marries into our family in the future, Mother, don't be too hard on yourself. You are Father's wife. The most important thing is to hold on to Father's heart. Being apart from her is secondary. Father welcomed Madame Chao into the family, so he must feel guilty towards you. You also gave birth to Father's only child, and Han, and Zhao, have to appear in front of Father every day. They have to call Father maternal grandfather and call you the maternal grandmother. No matter what he does, you are his legal wife. This point will not change. As long as you hold on to these things, your future days will be smooth sailing. If you are used to seeing some things, you can watch. If you are not used to seeing some things, you can let go of them. No one will be able to take away your position. The Sun Clan nodded slowly. I understand what you are saying. Your grandmother also persuaded me to do the same. I will go back and discuss with Chao Yuqing. If your father's heart is with her, the more he can't get her, the more worried he will be. It is better to let her marry into our family. Besides, she is not that annoying. The Sun Clan's words were awkward. In the end, she was still unwilling to accept it. Chin Ening couldn't persuade her anymore. He could only sigh helplessly. In reality, Chin Ening wasn't too worried about the Sun Clan. Even if she wasn't by his side, Father wouldn't treat her unfairly. Besides, Chin Ening was the daughter raised by the Sun Clan. With Chin Ening around, the Sun Clan would have someone to talk to in the future. Besides, Father couldn't do something like spoiling his concubine and neglecting his wife. Father still had this principle. As for safety, with Father around, she didn't have to worry about the whole family. Qin Yining leaned on the Sun Clan's shoulder and murmured, "Mother will be fine in the future. You will live in harmony with father. Old Madam is also old. Don't bicker with her. Turn a blind eye to everything. Everything will pass. Take good care of yourself and take care of your body. Live a long life and wait to hold a great-grandson in the future. This is the greatest blessing." The Sun Clan laughed when she heard this. "You little girl, this is something that will happen decades later. Why are you reminding me now? You sound like a little old lady." Qin Yining also laughed and pretended to be angry. "I'm just reminding you for nothing. If you don't want to listen, I won't say it." It was rare for their daughter to act coquettishly. The Sun Clan found it interesting and novel. They pulled Qin Yining aside and chatted for a long time. Qin Yining discovered that the Sun Clan was no longer so opposed to father taking in a concubine under grandmother's guidance. He quietly relaxed. If he didn't take it to heart, he might be less angry in the future. This world had always been strict with women. There was no other way to survive. Could he persuade father and mother to divorce just because he was angry? Qin Yining felt helpless and sighed. He chatted with the Sun Clan for a long time. It wasn't until Qin Huayuan returned to his room to rest that Qin Yining got up and left. "Father and mother, please settle down. I also need to go back to rest." Qin Huayuan nodded slightly. He couldn't help saying so many things in front of his daughter and accidentally let Chao hear it. Although the misunderstanding was cleared up, he still couldn't get rid of it. Qin Yining was very considerate of Qin Huayuan and didn't ask much. It was a silent night. The next day, Peng Xiao went to the military camp early in the morning. Qin Yining stayed at home to accompany the children. After the afternoon, Qiu Lu and Lian Xiaozhou came back quickly. Wang Fei, Wang Yi sent people to pick up old Madame Yao. "The carriage has arrived at the gate of the mansion. Old Madam asked me to come and tell you." Qin Yining nodded. "I know." She stood up and told Qiu Lu and Lian Xiaozong to help take care of Brother Zhao and Brother Han. She took the white fox fur cloak and draped it over her shoulders. Then, she hugged the hand warmer and took Cloud Sender with her as she walked forward. She knew that the Sun Clan told her this because they wanted her to give some face to the Yao clan. Although Qin Yining felt that the Yao clan's character was worrying, after all, they were Pang Zhao's biological mother. The Sun Clan's analysis was also reasonable. It was not good to fall out with Pang Xiao and put her in a dilemma. Moreover, if something happened to her and Pang Xiao, she wouldn't have the chance to see the Yao clan again. She just had disagreements with her mother-in-law. It wasn't a blood feud. There was no need to be so narrow-minded. It was better to be generous and leave a good memory for each other. Qin Yining quickly walked to the front yard. She saw two elderly servants wearing dark blue cotton coats helping the Yao clan down from the carriage. The Yao clan was wearing a rose-red jacket and a red fur coat. She took the hand warmer after getting down from the carriage. "Why are you so slow? Didn't you say that you would arrive this morning?" "Old Madam, we're not that late. We took a detour on the way." The servant smiled. Yao clan said unhappily, "Why did you take a detour? Do you think my son doesn't care about me and neglects me? I'm back now. Be careful and tell my son to punish you for your crimes. You are the master and we are the servants. We don't dare." The two servants hurriedly smiled apologetically. Yao clan snorted. She looked up at the plaque hanging above Qin Manor and then looked at the large courtyard. She couldn't help but snort. Isn't this considered overstepping the boundaries? A commoner's manor is actually bigger than a prince's manor. The servants beside her didn't say anything. Qin Yining suppressed her displeasure and came forward to salute. "Greetings, old madam." Yao Clan's face immediately darkened when she saw Qin Yining. Oh, I was wondering who it was. Isn't this the noble Prince Zhongshuan's wife? Yao Shi walked in front of Qin Yining and looked askance at her disgusting face. Ever since she had shed all pretenses, she could not be bothered to pretend to be a loving mother and filial son. What? You had the ability to make my son lock me up. If you have the ability, don't let my son take me back. Why are you pretending to be filial and humble now? Have you forgotten how you treated me back then? Qin Yining sighed helplessly. It seemed that Yao Clan had been angered to the point of stupidity. They dared to make such a ruckus in front of the manor. Weren't they afraid that outsiders would talk about it? Yao Clan didn't care about their reputation, but Qin Yining couldn't ignore Pang Zhao's reputation. If people knew that Prince Zhongshuan's mother spoke like this, she wouldn't be able to raise her head and talk to others in court in the future. Qin Yining didn't answer Yao Clan's question. She just came forward and saluted. Old madam, you must be tired from the journey. The manor has already prepared. Chapter 885. Qin Yining was too close, and the Yao Clan's actions were too sudden. She wanted to react, but she only had time to take a step back. The hand warmer fell next to her feet with a bang. The brass lid with the Rui pattern was thrown open. The burning charcoal in the hand warmer fell to the ground. Some of the charcoal splashed onto Qin Yining's skirt and cloak. When it came into contact with the wind, it immediately ignited. "Aya, Wang Fei!" Ji Yun exclaimed. She hurriedly took off Qin Yining's cloak and threw it far away. She didn't care about burning her hands and went to extinguish the sparks on Qin Yining's skirt. 2 blisters instantly appeared on her slender white fingers, but fortunately, she didn't burn Qin Yining's skirt. Ji Yun glared angrily at the Yao clan. This was Wang Ye's birth mother. If it was someone else who dared to harm Wang Fei, she would have taken them down long ago. "Wang Fei, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Qin Yining shook her head with a heavy expression. There weren't many servants in the family Qin now. Those who stayed were the ones she would bring to Shiyu in the future. They were all extremely loyal. In front of her own door, seeing the family Qin's eldest aunt being treated like this, 3 or 4 manservants in the front yard gathered around and glared at the Yao clan. As long as the Yao clan made another move, they wouldn't care about anything else. There were even more quick-witted ones who ran inside to report to Madame Sunday. The cloak that Qin Yining had thrown on the ground was already burning. The smell of burning filled her nose. The doorman quickly brought a basin of water to extinguish the fire. It was a pity that the high-quality material was wasted. Looking at the mess on the ground, Qin Yining calmly said, "It seems that old Furen's hand slipped." The Yao clan didn't necessarily want to burn her to death, but she did want to hit her with the hand warmer. Qin Yining held back his anger. He didn't want to forgive the Yao clan so easily, but it didn't look good arguing with his mother-in-law in front of the door. In the eyes of the common people, when the younger generation quarreled with the elder, as long as the elder cried and pretended to be pitiful, most people would say that the younger generation was unfilial. The common people sympathized with the weak. The previous emperor ruled the country with filial piety, so no one considered that some of the older bad people were not good people when they were young. She was the daughter of the family Qin. No matter what, she couldn't allow others to point fingers at her and say that the family Qin didn't teach her well. Especially now that her father was about to take the family away from home, it wasn't good to create more problems. Seeing that Qin Yining didn't flare up but found a reasonable excuse for her, Yao clan immediately laughed. With arms akimbo, she approached Qin Yining and asked proudly, "What? Are you afraid?" She was sent to the village by Pang Xiao. Although there was no lack of food and drink for her, she couldn't even walk half a step out of the village. That place was very remote and there wasn't even a market for her to visit. She had never been wronged like this over the years. In the past, her son wouldn't treat her like this. Pang Shao was a good son who was filial and generous. But since this vixen married into the family, there was no peace in the family. Let me tell you, you're lucky that I didn't burn your vixen face today. Yao Clan sneered, now that my son is willing to take me back, you should know who is more important in his heart, right? Your family Qin's daughter is not good at embroidery and treats her mother-in-law harshly. You even committed the crime of jealousy in public. My son is such a hero, but he was charmed by a vixen like you and forgot his roots. Today, my son took me back to your house. Just in time. I was going to ask your elders for an explanation. Your father is gone, but your mother is still alive. Let's have a good talk about how she, as a mother, raised her daughter. Let your mother come out. Old madam, we're in front of the gate. It's not good for Wang Ye's reputation to make a fuss. Besides, did old madam's hand slip and drop the hand warmer? If this matter spreads, people will only listen but not speak. If things go wrong, they might spread a rumor that you wanted to burn me to death. Bullshit. You still want to threaten me. Speaking of which, you were the one who stood in the wind and splashed the charcoal. I wasn't the one who lit the fire for you with firewood. A vixen like you doesn't need this old lady to dirty her hands. While they were making a ruckus, there were already many people standing in front of the gate. Qin Yining saw that this was outrageous and ordered in a deep voice, enter the residence and close the door. He then turned around and entered the gate. The two servants outside the gate also felt that something was wrong and immediately supported the Yao clan on either side and forcefully brought them in. The gatekeeper immediately took the charcoal, the hand warmer, and the wet cloak in front of the gate and closed the gate. At this time, an angry roar suddenly came from the inner residence. Who dares to touch my daughter? Let her try. Immediately after, the Sun clan brought Mother Jean and Chao Yuqing out. Seeing the Yao clan dressed in bright clothes, the Sun clan quickly stepped forward and blocked Qin Yining behind them. He angrily said, "What is the meaning of this, madam? Are you blocking my Qin Manor's gate and making things difficult for my daughter? Sister Yi said something wrong and did something wrong. As her mother-in-law and elder, you can teach her or reprimand her. How can you randomly hit her? Look, her dress was burned to this extent. What if she accidentally burned someone? What would you say? Who hit her? She bumped into me herself." The Yao clan would never admit it and sneered, "Is your family's lack of rules something that has been passed down in your family? Seeing madam like this, I'm not surprised at your daughter's actions." You! The Sun clan was so angry that they almost wanted to scratch someone. "First madam, please calm down." Chao Yuqing was afraid that it would be difficult to do Qin Yining if the in-laws quarreled, so she quickly supported the Sun clan. When the Yao clan saw that the Sun clan didn't speak, they thought of the suffering they had suffered recently. Before they could think it through, they couldn't help but blurt out their thoughts. What kind of family is this? No wonder they raised such a shrew. It turns out that a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. How dare you! The Sun clan was furious and pointed at the Yao clan with trembling fingers. Chao Yuqing was afraid that the Sun clan would suffer losses, so she coldly reprimanded, "If madam is dissatisfied with her daughter-in-law, no matter how much she teaches her daughter-in-law, it's not wrong. But as servants, even if we have a leisurely life, we have never seen a mother-in-law who blocked the door of her mother-in-law's house and made a scene." She even scolded the other party's parents. "If a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow, then you intended to burn my family's Miss C and even wanted to kill her by arson. Do you think you're a crooked shadow?" The Yao clan didn't have the strength to fight back and screamed, "You, who are you? It's your turn to speak." Chao Yuqing said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you're right." "That's right. You're also a mother. Even if you gave birth to a son, other people's daughters didn't jump out of the crack of a rock. They were also raised by their parents. You're so mean. Aren't you afraid of retribution?" The Sun clan's voice trembled with anger. The Yao clan put her hands on her hips. "The Qin clan is jealous. They openly said that they don't allow my son to take a concubine. That's a crime. It's already my mercy that I didn't divorce such a prodigal and jealous woman on the spot. Besides, she was kidnapped by the Tauters. Who knows what happened to her when she was outside? You want my son to be a tortoise? Bah! In your dreams. My son is an honest man. Don't bully my family because there's no one with a clear mind. You're the one who's unchaste. You slandered my daughter. I'll kill you." The Sun clan's eyes were red with anger. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, wanting to scratch the Yao clan's face. How could the Qin Yining let her mother and mother-in-law really fight? If they really fought, the nature of the matter would change. "Mother, please calm down. Calm down. Calm down." The Sun clan's mother was stopped by her daughter and couldn't get rid of the Qin Yining's hand. She was so angry that tears fell down. "You wicked girl. You're usually like a bully, but when you're at your husband's house, you're bullied by that old woman. No, we don't want to live with the Peng Zhishi anymore. Come back and I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. We don't want to go to their house to be bullied." "Mother." Before the Qin Yining finished speaking, the Yao clan shouted again, "You want to return to the Qin family? Don't even think about getting a divorce letter. Wait for the divorce letter." The Yao clan's shrewish behavior was really unheard of in the Qin's mansion. The Sun clan's mother was trembling with anger. She wanted to hit them but couldn't because she was held back. She turned around and ordered Chao Yuqing, "Yuqing, go and ask people to invite old master and old madam to the mansion. I can't reason with this shrew. There should be someone in charge. Then go to the barracks and ask Wang Yi to come back. Whether Wang Yi wants a divorce or a divorce letter, our family can't let our daughter suffer losses. No matter what, we have to ask for an explanation." "Yes, madam." Chao Yuqing turned around and ordered people to do the job. Seeing this, the Yao clan's mother was so angry that her eyes turned red. "Your family is a vixen with bad intentions. It's good that you asked my son to come. Let him see how your family Qin bullies me because I'm alone. Ouch! How can I live like this? I can't live like this." The Yao clan cursed and scolded. Then, she sat on the ground and cried. The Yao clan's unreasonable behavior shocked the family Qin's people. The Sun clan's mother was a daughter of a noble family. She had never seen such unreasonable people looking for trouble. She was so angry that she almost fainted and breathed heavily. Qin Yining quickly helped the Sun clan's mother to sit down. Then, he ordered Ji Yun, "Why aren't you helping old madam up? Why is she sitting on the ground?" Ji Yun obeyed and went to help her up. However, the Yao clan's mother continued to roll on the ground. Her hair was messed up and she refused to get up. Qin Yining had a splitting headache. Originally, the family was preparing to migrate. They needed to keep a low profile and live in harmony with each other. However, the Yao clan just had to cause trouble at this time. She couldn't blame the Sun clan for doting on her and arguing with the Yao clan. Based on her understanding of her mother, the fact that the Sun clan didn't really order people to press the Yao clan to the ground and beat them up was already a huge improvement. Now that the situation in the imperial court was so tense, the family Qin and the Pang clan had to be united in order to survive. Once discord arose between them, they couldn't guarantee each other's safety even if they went to Xia. Today, the Yao clan didn't deliberately want to burn her to death. Even if they did, she could only suppress the matter. She couldn't let the two families have a falling out at this time. However, Qin Yining felt wronged. She really didn't understand what the Yao clan was thinking. Intestines. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.